Hey, gals and guys, this is Michael Ferrari of Cinema to Meep. Welcome to episode 33 of the Retro Movie Love podcast. And with me today is my pal, Kieron Edwards. Hey, Kieron.
Hey, how's it going, Michael? It's a very thrilling to come back here after it's been a while, and I'm so glad that I finally get to talk to you about Satan in
Yes,
film.
that's our topic for today. Occult films, occult horror movies, mostly. So I think they're all. I think we're pretty much all occult horror. I mean, there are not many occult comedies. There are a few, but we're mostly going into the occult horror world in this
You
episode.
you could say with some of our choices, there could be a cult in unintentional comedy going on.
Right. Although, looking at the list, I think mine are a bit more goofy than yours, or I don't know. I guess you could look at horror movies in general as goofy, but that's not how
I
we.
th- yeah, I think I guess we can talk about my experience, like sort of understanding the occult. I think we both have, say, I guess different backgrounds because I come from a very, shall we say, heathen background. So I basically don't really know much about religion and have a basic knowledge of what God and the devil are. So I decided to go into seeing as many movies in the 70s that made me get a better understanding of what God and the devil really are and what they're doing.
Right. I come from a background, I guess, was religious, but Jehovah's Witness. That's what my grandmother was, and just
Hmm.
sort of made me and my sister uh, do made us do that. So we had this kind of fear of like doing the wrong thing, fear of Satan, fear
Right.
of going not so much going to hell because Jehovah's Witnesses don't believe in that. They just believe in having a paradise on earth, and if you're bad, you basically die forever. Um,
Wow.
so it was kind of like basically the Book of Revelations is kind of very heavy with the Jehovah's Witnesses. So it's kind of
So it's
very
a very Old Testament then.
it's very well, it's kind of a mix of the two. I would
Hmm.
say. Um, but I don't know. It kind of made me fear like everything,
Right.
and also at the same time being a hardened like New York kid as well. So
Mhm.
I kind of just I just I guess I didn't know how to deal with religion and God, and I tried my best to do it. I was pretty good with it when I was in the religion. But
Right.
but basically once I was 18 and just I could decide for myself to say no, I said no, and I just didn't want to be a part of it. And I just basically stopped all religion in my life, and so I'm coming at it from a sort of similar point as you, where we didn't really well, at some point in your life you didn't just have religion in general, but I just don't. Yeah, it's just not what part of me who I am. But
Right.
I respect everyone else's beliefs, and but I was always been drawn um, to these kinds of movies because I don't know, they scared me, of course. They just kind of just this fascination with occult and film, and I don't know what it was. I guess maybe because I saw a lot of these movies in the '80s. I was watching a lot of like late night movies on
Right.
TV, and a
Right.
lot of them happened to be like these kinds. I remember seeing Devil's Reign when I was really little, like a late night TV airing
Yeah.
of it, and that
That's
just
a good
like
movie to see late night.
yeah, this like really freaked me out. Like it's like melt all these melting faces and
Hmm.
like Ernest Borgnine just being creepy in
Right.
every movie in the '80s. It seemed like, I
There's a good
just
joke with that film. I think someone, if I remember reading about it, basically called that film the ultimate cult film.
mhm.
Basically because there are, it's basically a cult movie that involves Anton LaVey and the cast as well, part of the Church of Satan.
Mhm.
And there's an early part for John Travolta in it. And John Travolta, if you ever read the Going Clear book about Scientology, he actually got introduced to Scientology by a particular cast member on that movie.
Wow, that's interesting. So you got
Yeah,
introduced to Satanism and Scientology on
and
one movie.
Scientology in one movie.
That's
Yeah, and
pretty
actually
awesome.
the actress I believe is Joan Prather, and I think she is the wife of Tom Skerritt in the movie. And I think in the end, there's maybe we should spoiler alert. Basically, well, it's a '70s movie, so it ends kind of on a down note. But she ends up sort of basically in hell essentially by accident
Hmm.
in the last scene, basically, and it's kind of like a I don't know. You later on, you if you once you know that she is someone who's a Church of Scientology, you can read all kinds of things into that final shot, essentially.
Right.
So, I also realized more recently that that I have a soft spot for films in which people melt, but that's just a whole other story. But you can draw your own conclusions. But yeah, there are a lot of my films that I like involve that particular effect, shall we say? So
I mean, it's also like I couldn't like. It's like hard to turn down a movie with Satan in the title. Generally,
very true.
like oh, Satan's School for Girls is on. I gotta watch this, or Satan's Cheerleaders, and they all turn out to be really fun movies. So,
Those in particular, yeah, those are really fun ones to talk about. So
so we'll get to our lists a little bit later. Before we do, let's talk about what we've been watching recently. And I know we've been watching a lot of occult movies in general. I know you have especially been watching a lot of occult movies. But have you been watching anything else?
I didn't. I figured in case you guys want to talk about Stranger Things, I decided not to feel left out. So this is actually the first Netflix series, believe it or not, that I actually binge watched. So
Oh wow!
yeah, I know it's.
Congratulations.
I guess so. It was my own sort of protest because I'm kind of annoyed with Netflix sort of focusing more on TV series and kind of shuffling off movies from the site.
Right.
So I was just kind of upset about that. But in this particular, been hearing so many interesting things about the TV series that I had to see it. And it was a pretty. I was able to watch it in a weekend essentially. So it was a pretty fast watch.
And what do you think of it?
I enjoyed it quite a bit. This strangely enough, the '80s casting, those particular parts of Winona Ryder's and Matthew Modine's, I don't think are necessarily the best written parts in the TV series. I was more compelled with what the kids were doing and even what the teenagers were doing.
Right.
I think Winona Ryder had a very difficult sort of. She was sort of like her arc is sort of starts at this very sort of high emotional high point, and she kind of has to sustain it for however many episodes, 8 episodes.
Hmm.
So it's kind of difficult, I think, as an actor to sort of to have any sort of nuance.
Sure.
There are certain scenes and the middle part, the middle 3 or 4 episodes, I enjoyed quite a bit because of I don't know. I think I know you guys had mentioned the Fury being like a big influence that no one really talks about, and I could see that very clearly as well. That particular character is probably the most compelling one I thought in the series. So, and Matthew Modine was kind of not really given much to do necessarily, so I felt kind of bad for him.
You know what I thought while watching Matthew Modine in this movie? I'm like, I think they were going for Ted Danson, but they couldn't get him, so they got Matthew Modine with like silver fox hair. And
Yeah, yeah, that's very true. Yeah, I hadn't thought about that, but yeah, that would have been a good part for Ted.
Ted would be great. I think he would have added a little bit more nuance and personality or something. I don't know, like a little bit of humor.
Yeah, I think for some reason that he was just sort of I don't know. He might have been directed to be kind of like a blank, sort of unemotional. I don't know, kind of cipher in a way.
Right.
So, but yeah, I didn't really see too much behind the character necessarily. So, but I was curious towards the end whether it was going to end up being a standalone, story by itself. But what do you think about the basically them leaving it open to be, I guess, a continuing series with those same characters?
I was kind of hoping it would be a standalone series and just like something else completely different for season two, because
Mhm.
because that kind of opens up the potential for anything.
Right.
But they're continuing with the same characters. I'm not sure how interested I am in that. I like the characters. I like the kids a lot. So I guess if it's going to
Hmm.
be focusing on the kids again, and maybe they're a little bit older, I guess at this point they would be a little bit older. Then it would. I guess there's potential for them going on a different adventure, but I think they're continuing the same story plot points
Hmm.
and the upside down and that
Right.
in that world and realm. That might that might lose me a little bit because I'm not so much super into that. I liked a lot of the elements of the show. I liked how it all came together and just the 80s-ness of the early 80s-ness of it. So I was kind of
Yeah.
hoping it would be like, okay, it would be like 1987 or the 90s or something, just kind of like a different decade, different characters, and another cool story. I just don't think I'd want to see another like kidnapping of a kid and like and just abduction of some kind. I don't know if I'm just not into that sort of plot.
Right.
Just wondering where they could take it. Yeah, I mean, because of there was good writing in the first season, and the directors obviously had a vision for it. So I have faith that the potential is good for season two. But I was kind of maybe hoping it would be something else too. But
Yeah, I
we'll see.
understand. I was wondering, curious, like especially when someone produces a TV series for Netflix, do they produce a season sort of knowing that the series itself could just be like a standalone on its own, or if they like, I assume like most people when they produce a series like that, they have like like a 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 season sort of in their heads essentially. But I was wondering if they always had in mind that this story was going to continue in the same vein, after this first season, or
Right.
if they like got a green light essentially that they could continue. Because I always wonder, like, I still don't understand the Netflix mode of operations as far as do they renew seasons right away, or if how their model works, basically.
Right. I think for a show like that, because it became such a hit out of the gate, it was inevitable
Mm-hmm.
that they would have a second season. Anything else you've been watching?
That's kind of it. I haven't really been out seeing movies. The last one I saw was the Star Trek movie, which it was fine.
Mm-hmm.
I enjoyed the Star Trek ones. I actually, well, I shouldn't say enjoy since I actually skipped the con one. So, but I've heard different things. Some people really swear by it, and other people just don't like Cumberbatch, I guess, as Khan. So,
Mm-hmm.
but yeah, I missed that one. But yeah, I think I enjoyed the first reboot, and I enjoyed this one fine. I like all the actors, and it was kind of sad seeing Anton Yelkin for the last time
That's right. Yeah.
as Chekhov in there. And I did see his other like independent film. Did you ever see the? Do you remember the Green Room that came out earlier this year?
Yeah, I did. I did see that eventually.
Yeah, I actually enjoyed that quite a bit as well. It's quite a different film, but it was a good start. It was a good turn by him, and just good seeing Patrick Stewart as a bad guy as well in that one. How about
Unless
yourself? What have you been watching
I
lately?
haven't been watching. I mean, I watched a few things. I took my kids to see like the kids movies that were playing this summer, like Secret Life of Pets and Peach Dragon, and they really liked
Hmm.
the Secret Life of Pets. I liked it. I thought it was fun for what it was. I mean, it wasn't great, but it was fun, I guess. Um, and
I'm just not the age bracket anymore to see those films.
yeah, just it's not something I would normally see, obviously. But also Pete's Dragon, which I don't remember liking the cartoon when I was a kid, and I didn't like this one either. So there's that. They were kind of bored too, so
Yeah.
there's that. Breaking Two, we watched that because Breaking One went over really well with the family, so Breaking Two busted that out, and there was lots of love for Breaking Two. Although I do much prefer Breaking One. Breaking Two gets has some good moments, but it's kind of boring in spots, and not as
Yeah.
not
Yeah.
as well put together as Part One. And then a couple of really random things. I saw a movie called why I watch this I don't know. Ace the Case Manhattan Mystery,
What
starring
is that?
starring some kids and Susan Sarandon. Very random movie about this little girl who kind of witnesses a kidnapping, and then no one believes her, and then Susan Sarandon plays a cop, and she kind of they kind of partner together to solve the crime.
This is a newer film.
It's a new movie. Yeah, it's a brand new movie,
Wow.
and yeah, it was interesting. It was. I don't know. I guess I watch it because Susan Sarandon. I'll see anything she's in, and I don't
Mm.
know. It just I guess it's sort of a kids movie, but there's also like murder in it, and so I don't know what age bracket this one's going for, since there's like some bad
So you're
stuff
saying
happens in it.
you're saying this could have been made in the 70s?
Yeah, although but it has like a very like digital movie sheen from today.
Mm.
It's also shot in Manhattan, New York, and it's kind of like I don't know. I enjoyed parts of it, but I kind of fall. It's not. I wouldn't recommend it. Um, I did watch The Intervention. Have you heard of this movie?
Remind me what it's
It's
about.
a new movie with a bunch of like 30 something actors. Basically,
Oh,
it's
wait. I know that's the one that Clea Duvall wrote and directed.
yes, Clea Duvall
Okay.
stars along with a bunch of young actors of that generation, and it's basically
Well,
the
and
Big
also my
Chill.
favorite actress too. I forget. Melanie Linsky's in it as
Hmm.
well. Yeah, she's one of my favorites.
I love her, and I watched the HBO show that was canceled. So
Oh, it was. That
yeah,
was the Duplass brothers one, right?
yeah, they canceled that show because I
Uh,
guess not enough people watched it.
okay.
But she's a guy because I love her so much. She's good in the film. She's kind of the central character.
Mhm.
It's basically the Big Chill again.
Right.
A bunch of 30 somethings in a house, a big like mansion in the South, and over a weekend, and then bonding and
Right.
grieving and all that fun stuff. And
Mhm.
I recommend it. I liked it.
Okay. Yeah, I'll have to try and
I
check
thought
it
it was
out.
pretty smartly written, and even though it doesn't like shake up anything, it's the ensemble movie you think it's going to be.
Hmm.
I think there's some good performances there, and I think there's enough to enjoy.
Right.
And then finally, actually, there are two movies. The Last Keepers. There was this movie about witchery. I guess you want to. I guess it would be in the occult section.
Oh yeah.
It stars Virginia Madsen and a few other people. Very random movie I watched on Netflix one day. It's very what's his name? Aiden Quinn's in it.
Oh wow.
It's
I
actually
haven't
it
seen him
actually
in a
has a,
while.
it actually has a really good cast.
Hmm.
And I liked it. It was kind of very autumnal feeling. It was going for that like autumnal East Coast kind of feeling.
Okay.
I think it might be set in the East Coast, like in because I think it revolves around Salem witch trial kind of
Uh huh.
stuff, and some cheesiness to it. There's definitely a lot of cheesy factor to it,
Right.
but
Right.
I sort of liked it.
Okay.
I like those kinds of movies. It kind of veers almost in Lifetime territory, but
Mm.
it's actually a movie, so it's not an actual Lifetime movie. And then just
It's
to
not a movie with a question in the title, basically.
yeah, right. And then just today I watched a movie. Finally watched this movie that I missed when it came out in theaters. The Neon Demon.
Oh yeah, I kind of forgot on purpose that I saw that.
What are your thoughts on that one?
It's uh, it's just the kind of movie that I don't know. I think it's really, really, really beautiful to look at.
Hmm.
Um, Everyone, I think, for the most part, does a fine job. I'm a huge fan of Jenna Malone, and she's great in it. I like this whole um, Keanu Reeves goes dark period that
Hmm.
he's in right now. So
Right.
he's very convincing in that as well. But it's just really says nothing that I basically haven't seen before 100 times.
Right.
So yeah, it's just but it's just I don't know, something annoyed me about it, that it sort of presented itself as like saying something more profound than it actually had to say. And that was my impression of it anyway.
Yeah, I mean, I was kind of feeling that too, but at some point in the movie, I don't know what happens, but I kind of let it take it, kind of
Mm.
let it take over me, and I just kind of just like watch it and just enjoy the visuals, and yeah, the story is very simple, so it's not really saying anything interesting overtly. But then I started thinking, after it was over, I started thinking about it more, and it
Hmm.
kind of, I don't know, it just kind of stuck with me. And it's a movie that kind of like nothing happens for a long time, and then like gets kind of really gruesome. I
Right,
mean,
right.
spoiler alert. I'm not gonna say what happens, but it does get very gruesome and bloody
Hmm.
towards the end. Although it's kind of bloody throughout. And yeah, it's beautiful, it's striking, and obviously Nicholas is like having fun with the visuals and how
Hmm.
he's telling the story with music and mood, and yeah, stories that have been told before, like by directors like David Lynch, to name a
Right.
few, right? But I don't know. I kind of like what he was doing with it. I just thought like he was kind of putting me in a bit of a trance,
Hmm.
and much like the lead character.
Right.
And I just don't know. I just really liked it. And then I like thought about it more. I'm like, well, maybe he's like this is kind of like his his commentary on like just working in Hollywood and LA and just like seeing a bit more of LA myself. I'm like, oh yeah, I could definitely see you know
Yeah.
when
No, I
you're an outsider of LA. Like he's from Norway. He's Norwegian, right?
yes, he is Norwegian.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and just his view of like LA from that point of view and working for
Oh, wait a
Hollywood.
minute. Wait. Is he Norwegian? I think he might be either
S-
Norwegian or Danish.
Oh yeah, I think he might be Danish. That
Yeah.
makes more sense. I haven't seen a lot of his movies. Like I've seen
You seen Drive?
Drive, which I
Yeah.
loved. I think it was my favorite
Yeah.
movie of that year. I'd seen the movie he did after that. I did not like that. The one
I did.
with
Oh,
what's his name again? Drive again.
yeah. I didn't see that either. Um, yeah, he had this whole series of, I guess they're called the Pusher trilogy. I think that's what he was famous for. But I
Yes,
didn't.
I
But I
didn't.
didn't see any of those.
Yeah, I didn't.
Um, You did jog my memory about a couple of other Netflix actual films I did see in the last month. There's that film We Are Still Here. I don't know if you know about that film.
Oh, I love that movie.
Yeah, I saw that finally because it showed up on Netflix a few months ago. Yeah, I do like that film a lot. Just like the I just like seeing Barbara Crampton actually just acting in films. I just think she should be acting in films all the time. And it's just a great like last 15, 20 minutes also.
Yeah, yeah.
Um,
I like
and
that.
then
It
there were
also feels like a Fulci movie in a way, in some ways too.
yes, yeah, especially once it gets down to the basement, and especially once you see like the last 15 or 20 minutes, it's definitely you can see the Fulci influence. And then there was this film called Darling. Um,
Sounds familiar.
it's a black and white film starring this woman. I'm trying to remember what her name is, but she was in this film called Jugface, which I don't know if you saw.
No, I remember the box for
The
like
Box,
yeah.
right?
I
And
don't
then,
remember seeing
yeah,
it.
the actress in that, which that film is decent, and this film was also decent. I think both of them are Glass Eye Pix features. But it's basically a woman who basically is, I guess you could say, caretaking this apartment building in New York.
Hmm.
And the woman who is her contact is played by Sean Young.
Right.
Um, and it's just kind of it's basically a variation on Repulsion.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
it's decent, and the lead is good, but not like a revelation. I would say. I think
Okay.
she does very well. I think, but I think there's not as much story as you would think there would be
Sure.
um, going into the film. So it's definitely worth just a watch. I think just because it's definitely got a particular style that's appealing as well, and it's in black and white, and it gets pretty bloody and. But yeah, I don't know if it would be something you would necessarily
Well,
want to buy, but
I like the Glass Eye Pix kind of releases
I do
generally.
too. Yeah, I think they're for the most part. I think especially when they try to not. Occasionally, sometimes their special effects, their ambitions for their special effects
Right. Right.
are larger than their budget sometimes, and sometimes you can see that, and it kind of takes you out of certain films. But
Had that problem with the Fessenden movie, the one in the lake.
oh yeah, that I haven't seen that one. Actually, the first time I remember like noticing that was his really great. Remember that film Wendigo?
Oh yeah, I really like that.
That film was great until they actually show the Wendigo.
Right.
Like they actually show the Wendigo a little too much, unfortunately.
Yeah.
But everything else about that film was great. So it's the same thing that what happens with the Lake movie then.
Yeah, they show a lot of the because they're constantly being menaced by this thing in the water, and
Mhm.
they show a lot of it, and I don't know, it just doesn't. It's not convincing, and also it
Yeah.
gets very boring and tedious because the characters are very like despicable characters, like
Mm.
on a boat. So it's like lifeboat with a bunch of despicable people, with unconvincing
Yeah.
something in the water. I don't want to give anything away, but
Sounds like not a very good formula.
yeah, so I was kind of surprised he actually did the movie. I think it was written by other people. I think the screen, I think like his direction is fine. I think the screenplay just needed a lot of work, and definitely the effects didn't work. Didn't really sell me, even though they seem sort of practical at times. But I don't know. It just it wasn't for me. But
Mm.
generally,
Yeah.
I like his movies, and I like the Glass Eye Pix releases. So I'm glad there's still room for independent filmmaking today. Amongst they're not getting a lot of good horror movies at the multiplex. I know there's one playing right now. Don't Breathe. Do you have designs on seeing that one?
Um, Tempted just because Stephen Lang's involved.
Right. Yeah. Okay.
Um, and also, it's basically the same guy who directed the Evil Dead remake, which I did not hate. Like say compared to like say the Texas Chainsaw remake, it's like a masterpiece. Um, yeah, it's the actress in that film who basically is the woman who's possessed in the Evil Dead remake. She is like really amazing in the film, and I guess she's in this Don't Breathe film as well.
Okay.
So yeah, I'm a fan of hers as well. So yeah, I might check that out. But I think there's just a general sort of formula to the type of horror films that we're seeing these days. They're kind of all sort of paranormal-ish.
Right. Yeah, that seems to be the thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like and I like some of them. Like I like the ones that
Hmm.
James Wan does, and
Yeah.
but I don't know, I just don't want to see that all the time.
Right.
Sometimes I just want to see a simple old little slasher movie once in a while. Come and give me those again, and I'll be happy. But no,
Yeah, those would be nice again.
we don't get those. Oh well.
No.
I'm sure cult movies will make a comeback since paranormal, supernatural movies are in vogue. Um, but
I think they tried to like make a comeback with that Lords of Salem movie. It seems like they
oh yeah,
were.
that might have killed it.
Yeah.
Uh,
Unfortunately.
no offense to fans of
Yeah.
Lords of Salem. Not my kind of movie, but yeah, it's a movie.
Yep.
And I have a weird curiosity. Even though I have a problem with a lot of his movies, Rob Zombie,
Mhm.
I do kind of want to see 31 just to see what it's like. Yeah, just to
Yeah,
experience that.
I might eventually see it.
Yeah,
I always think I kind of he has a good eye. I think
right.
he's got a particular point of view.
Yeah, he definitely has a
Um,
point of view. I'm like, he has a point of view. So at
yeah,
least there's that.
yeah, he's that's yeah, he has that going for him and against him at the same time, I guess. But yeah, so I can't begrudge anyone that actually like has a particular like vision, even if I don't agree with their vision necessarily.
Right. So yeah, maybe occult movies. Who knows? We'll see what happens in the years to come. For now, let's take a trip back. I think we're going through the 70s and 80s mostly.
Hmm.
Maybe a dip into the 90s with me. We'll see. Now Ben Sure was originally going to be on this podcast, but life gets in the way, of course. So
Hmm.
he won't be on today, but he may make an appearance with an audio list, or I might have to read out a list for him at some point.
That would be awesome.
So I'm not sure where that's going to be. I'll edit it in probably in post. But look out for that, guys. Look out for Ben's list. So we're going to do our lists, and here is a trailer for your number 5, Kieran.
In your opinion, does the devil exist? There's no doubt about it. The Pope himself reaffirmed it recently, and not as a concept of evil, but as a real presence.
Runs away the night she enters the convent and joins a sect of devil worshippers.
Was a sign of the devil, Uncle.
That's ridiculous.
Then why doesn't God make himself understood? The devil does, and clearly too.
That's enough. That's blasphemy.
You see, I've always said that Hippolyta has extraordinary powers.
All right. So that was the trailer for the 1974 film, The Antichrist. I made it a point, essentially, there's basically a trinity, I guess you could say. Well, actually, you could say there's a quartet of particular influential cult films from the 70s. Although one technically was made in '68, but those are the ones that spawn the most, shall we say, we could just call them ripoffs, or we could just call them homages to these particular films. One would be Rosemary's Baby, of course. The other one would be The Omen, and the other one that I guess some people might have heard of before, The Exorcist. Which, what more can you say about that film? Except if you want to hear a podcast viewpoint from a particular cast member that you wouldn't think you'd hear about the film from, you could check this podcast, I Was There Too. There's an actress, Eileen Dietz, who has a particular role that you didn't think she had necessarily in The Exorcist, and her story is very compelling.
Oh, I love that. I listened to that one. That was great.
It's pretty amazing, right?
Great episode, yeah.
Yeah. And so this particular film, The Antichrist, would be essentially like, from the timeline, it looks like it's the first Italian Italian sort of exorcist, shall we say, homage. Let's just call it an homage. And it's essentially The Exorcist, only the possessed girl is a woman who's been paralyzed in an auto accident that killed her mother, and was basically her father's fault. And essentially what happens is through hypnotherapy, which is one of the things that sort of became in vogue in the 60s and particularly the 70s, she finds out essentially that she was in another life where she was basically a witch that was burned at the stake for being a follower of Satan. And this just sends her on a particular spiral where where things change, essentially. And she, it's just your basic possession film. But what makes it much more striking is essentially because it's an adult who's being possessed by Satan, all the things that you were suggested in The Exorcist with Linda Blair's possession are not suggested in this film at all. She is particularly... her possession is something to behold. The actress Carla Gravina is actually... I was looking to see if she actually did any English language films, and it looks like she did not. But I would think with her performance that she could have done some films here in the States, because she kind of makes the film. there are a few different versions, cut and uncut, and like with most films, the uncut version of this, you'll actually like see certain things that you didn't think you would see on celluloid, and particularly something involving a goat, and that's basically all I'm going to say. It's involving a satanic ceremony. The film is just there are just moments of just particularly, shall we say, not high quality special effects, but really the most important compelling part of the movie is basically the main actress herself. I'm just particularly impressed by her, and I would think everyone should get a chance to watch the film if they can. Make sure they see it as the Antichrist. And I think if you see it as the Tempter, it's actually like the shortened version. So anyway, I recommend people check it out. Michael, have you seen this film?
I don't think I've seen this movie. I definitely haven't seen it in the Antichrist form. I think I might have seen it a long time ago as the Tempter.
Mm-hmm.
It was on VHS. Was it on VHS from what was the label?
I'd have to look at that up.
I just remember it's the box, not like Embassy or something. Maybe it was Embassy or something like that. I just remember seeing that box all the time and renting it and just kind of not knowing what to make of it. I remember, a lot of the foreign European kind of horror movies. And Spanish horror movies of the 70s were kind of marketed as American movies.
That's right.
I'm not sure if that might have been one of them that was like that. They kind of trick you into thinking they were American, like, oh, it's like The Exorcist, or and making you think it's American, but it's actually kind of a foreign movie. And of course, like you said, like in a very truncated form of some kind, very edited down. So you're losing all the good stuff. You're losing all the European stuff and the Spanish, the great Spanish stuff.
It's very, very European.
Yeah.
In that way.
I don't remember it, but I do remember seeing many kind of Exorcist kind of like movies. I remember the Black Exorcist movie, Abby.
Yes.
Seeing that and having a ball watching that.
Yes, that's a particular director who might show up on a list in the future, actually.
That's right. Yeah. So yeah, I need to check it out in this form. Is it on? Yeah. Is it on? I remember it was Anchor Bay put it out on DVD, right?
I think it's on DVD at this point. Yeah, I think it's been on DVD for a while. Yeah. The print is okay. When you have a particular film like this in the 70s, and when you see certain special effects that even in VHS form, are already not the best. That either adds to the charm when you see it in a clean print, or it might just make you it might take you out of the film. But yeah, I think this film has moments like that, but then there are other just pretty intense moments. Basically anything as once she gets possessed, it's just a big intense film, and it also involves her family as well, so it just becomes a very intricate sort of family psychodrama as well because of it. So
all right, I'm gonna have to check that out and see what it's about. I did watch the trailer that you sent me, and that was fun. Definitely had fun watching the trailer.
Yeah.
All right. We were originally going to do 4s or 3. I can't remember how many movies per person because we had a third person.
Right.
So we're kind of doing this on the flying by the seat of our pants kind of right now.
Pretty much.
So I'm going to throw in a 5th movie. This is definitely a comfort movie, a comfort occult movie. Here's the trailer.
When you open the door to the unknown, there's no telling who will drop in. Or who will drop dead. Witchboard, rated R.
Okay, yeah, Witchboard. I might have talked about this movie before. I think maybe on one of the music podcasts. I think I talked about it a little bit. But yeah, this was a movie that I saw I think it came out in February of '87. I remember seeing it as a double feature with Outrageous Fortune.
Really?
Yeah. It was either a double feature with it, or I snuck in. I think I remember seeing those two together. I probably snuck in to see like Outrageous Fortune, or vice versa. I don't remember what they were. They're both R-rated movies.
Right.
And that was at the Benson Theater. I remember in Bensonhurst, on 86th Street, not far from where Tony Manero walked his famous walk with the paint cans. I was there watching. Well, that was 10 years later. I was watching. Watching Outrageous Fortune and Witchboard, and
Right.
I had a ball watching both of those movies, as you can imagine. I just loved Witchboard. I thought it was so kooky. I love, as a Jehovah's Witness, one of those things that they, there's so many things where they don't want you to associate yourself with, and there were a lot of stories within the congregation of like Smurfs coming to life and like weird things. Like people reported that you just basically they want you to get away from things that they might think are religious based or just I don't know. I don't know what the thinking was, but the Ouija board was one of those things that you had to run away from, and I of course wanted to run towards it and embrace it and hold it and caress it and use it. I was fascinated by the Ouija board by Amityville 3D, which was used really well in that movie, and
Yeah, it is.
and so ever since seeing that movie in the theater in 3D, I was kind of, I want this Witchboard. I want this Ouija board. They call it Witchboard because I don't think they got the rights to use the name Ouija, probably, right?
Yeah, that sounds right.
I think that might be the case. And this is from the director of Night of the Demons, which I liked, but I sort of love this movie. I don't know. It's very 80s. Tawny Katane in the lead. Guys, story of like these two, a friendship and the possessed woman who gets in between them. What more do you want in an 80s movie? A big, beautiful house. I think the house, I remember correctly, was filmed and it was used for filming in other movies. I want to say Willard. Yeah,
really?
The same house as Willard, maybe Waxwork. Lots of movies with W, Witchboard, Willard, and Waxwork. And I just had a ball watching it in the very 80s music and the hair, Tawny Katane's big hair. Fell in love, and I just had to. It was that company Cinema Group. Do you remember Cinema Group in the 80s?
Very vaguely. I'm trying to remember what other films they released.
They released a few favorites of mine around that time. They were very short-lived group. Something Special, aka Willy Nilly. Do you remember that one?
Very, very vaguely, but yeah.
With Pamela Segal. I love that movie. They had a few movies, and so it's like a little independent movie. I don't know how much was made for it, but I don't think it grossed a lot. But it kind of flew under the radar a bit. So it came out around the same time. I remember also at the same time was Elm Street 3, which everyone wanted to see. That was a big hit.
Yep.
Some Kind of Wonderful was also around at the same time. So I was in heaven watching like Some Kind of Wonderful, Dream Warriors, Outrageous Fortune, and Witchboard. I was in like 80s heaven, and this was part of the reason why I love 1987 so much, was like starting early in the year with so many great movies like these movies. And of course the occult part comes with the Ouija and the possession and all that stuff. And I don't know, it's silly, it's not to be taken seriously. But at the same time, I get into it. It's not a particularly scary movie, I don't think. I mean, I guess some things or some elements could be, but I would say it's a bit more like of a drama with some occult undertones or overtones. I dig it. I know you haven't seen it in a long time, but
It's been a while.
Yeah, what do you remember about it?
Well, the first thing I actually do, it's one of those films in which the poster like is burned into my retina. Essentially, I love that poster, and especially remember seeing the trailer on TV and enjoying that immensely as well. The other thing, the acting is variable, but there's a particular actress in there, Kathleen Wilhoit, who has a very memorable role. She's particularly great in that film, and there's a scene involving a sundial that's pretty great, I remember as well.
I want to say, without completely spoiling them, I'm sure a lot of people have seen it, especially if you follow this podcast.
Yeah.
But she really should have been in the movie more.
Yeah, I agree.
I think she really kind of enlivens the movie because I think that for the most part, the love triangle is very serious. I mean, it's really not a love triangle; it's really a love story between two guys. Um, and
Yes, it is.
I would definitely say it is. And
Yeah.
I think it just needs. She's the only one who really lends it humor, and it's funny thinking that because Night of the Demons was kind of more funny, right? It's kind of more
Yes.
funny movies.
Yeah. Actually, it is kind of.
There's more humor in it in general, like
yeah,
throughout.
I agree.
And this one just has periods of humor, especially with her character. So when she's not around, it just kind of it comes a bit more serious, and I think that's what kind of that love story between two guys really comes to full bloom. But I really love her, obviously, and I think I talked about her a bit on the music podcast, so I won't bore you. But Kathleen Wilhoit rules, and I love her character so much.
Yeah, she's great. Yeah, that's where I remember her from the film. Yeah, it's a film that I haven't seen in it's been a few years. So, but I always remember enjoying it. So it's definitely a good choice.
And there are a lot of occult movies to talk about. A lot of them in the 80s for me. I already covered some of them, so I won't be talking about some of these. So don't be alarmed if I'm not talking about Trick or Treat or Stranger in Our House, which is also known as Summer of Fear. I really love that movie. I guess you could say Invitation to Hell, Teen Witch.
Yeah.
Basically a lot. Serpent in the Rainbow would fall into that category.
Yeah, that was my dad. He actually was he was very particularly disappointed that the movie did not follow the book, essentially.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he had, shall we say, an obsession with voodoo, actually.
Interesting.
Yeah,
I was always so scared of it.
Yeah, every few months or so we'll find like a random cassette tape with Haitian voodoo music on it somewhere. So that's what we're still going through. So
interesting.
Yeah, it is. And let's see other '80s films. Oh yeah. You were watching Evil Speak recently, weren't you?
I watched Evil Speak, and there was another one that's similar to that. I always mix those two up. What the hell was it? Oh, Fear No Evil. I always kind of mix those two because I guess evil in the title. Those definitely would have, I guess made a list, a huge list.
Right.
Talking about 80s, more 80s ones. I guess more honorable mentions. But what else would they be? Warlock movies. I like those a lot. Watcher in the Woods.
Yeah, that Watcher in the Woods is still fun.
Season of the Witch almost made my list. The Romero movie, and I love that movie. I don't know why. I maybe want to save it for a Romero podcast at some point. I think maybe it's worthy talking about that.
Yeah, it's definitely worth to talk about. I really like that film a lot as well.
Like that and Martin, maybe. I think Martin really is overlooked, I feel like. Children Shouldn't Play with Dead Things, I guess you could kind of put in the occult world. Lamora, Tale of the Supernatural. I remember really liking that.
Is that a witch or vampire sort of thing? I always get confused.
I know. I think it's kind of. I remember being kind of like both. I don't know. It just kind of feels like kind of that world.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a little weird. I mean, one of the films possibly on my list might delve into that sort of thing as well. So,
any other honorable mentions before we finish off our list?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I was also seriously considering Simon King of the Witches as well.
Oh yeah, that's a good.
That's it's more of like a deadpan sort of comedy about like a really sort of he starts out as kind of like a really sort of down on his luck warlock, essentially. And there are lots of I think it's just it's just one of Andrew Pryan's greater performances, I think. There was an early J.P. Simone produced film, Satan's Blood, which was made maybe a few years after Franco's death in Spain. So once that happened, lots of films came out of Spain that shall we say celebrated their newfound non-censorship, shall we say. And that one in particular is just kind of like a very, just a very decent, sexy giallo with Satan and blood.
I remember really liking that one. That was like 78 around there somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's one.
Yeah.
I feel like there were a lot of movies like that were kind of titled like that, Satan's Blood, where it was confusing, a little bit confusing for me when looking up the titles. But I remember liking that one. I didn't know that was J.P. Simon or.
Yeah, I think he was a producer on that. I don't think he directed it necessarily.
Cool.
Yeah, I think that was about it. I mean, I was trying to catch up on a few different, documentaries, like the particular one about the Church of Satan, since I didn't know so much about it. Mm-hmm. There's one called Satanis, which is basically takes place inside the Black House, the infamous Black House in San Francisco. So you actually get to see things going on there, and it's interesting as well to watch that and hear them interview their neighbors and that sort of thing. And he had a lion inside the house as well. So,
oh wow!
he was a very interesting person. So there are just way too many. Oh, the Eerie Midnight Horror Show is like a lesser Italian Exorcist clone also, but I think people who like Ivan Rasimov will like that film a lot, because he's basically Satan in the film, so he's cast quite well on that as well.
I guess The Believers was something that I really liked. It was also 87. Mm-hmm. Angel Heart also came out in 87, so 87 was kind of the year of that. The Witchmaker, I remember liking that.
Oh yeah. The people involved in that might also have a particular film on a certain list as well.
Cool. And then A Touch of Melissa. I think it was also known as A Touch of Satan. And then The Kiss from the 80s.
That one is a lot of fun.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. A lot of effects, a lot of makeup effects and stuff. That was kind of fun.
Yeah, Meredith Salinger's very underrated, I think, still.
Definitely. I know there are a few more, but I won't bore everyone with all that.
I think I mentioned to you guys when we were passing lists to each other about there's this film that has an opening title's dance number. It was called Ring of Darkness, but it's basically this disco sort of opening number that sort of explains the story of these 3-4 women and how they basically became Satan worshippers.
Oh, really?
It's pretty amazing. The rest of the film is but the first 5 minutes are pretty great.
It's pretty awesome. I'm going to read out some lists from some pals of the show who were kind enough to give us their top 5s. Before I get into the occult ones, there was one I had to leave off the De Palma podcast. I just didn't get it in time, and that was from Beardy Freak at Grindhouse Dave on Twitter. He sent me his top 5 De Palma movies, and they were Scarface, Untouchables, Carlito's Way, Body Double, and Blowout. Thank you so much, Grindhouse Dave. Great list. And then, cult-wise, Amanda Reyes. She wrote in, off the top of my head, Midnight Offerings, The Sentinel, Simon, King of the Witches, Race with the Devil, and Brotherhood of Satan. And because I can't keep it down to 5, would Teen Witch count? And I also love The Craft. And I would definitely say those count. Joseph Henson of the Hysteria Continues podcast, which I actually just recorded an episode with them.
Oh, nice.
They were kind enough to let me come on for the final exam podcast. So these both that podcast and this podcast should be airing around the same time. So
excellent.
It'll be fun. So you can look out for that one. The Hysteria Continues, and it's the final exam. And his top 5. He wrote in, here's mine. Some may be playing fast and loose, and his number 5 is Witchboard 2. So he likes the sequel more. Number 4 is Don't Look Now. Number 3 is The Evil Dead. Number 2 is The Burbs, and his number 1 is Evil Dead 2.
Excellent.
Thanks, Joe. And then Eric Threlfall, also from the same podcast, Sarah Continues. Okay, here's my top 5, which, no pun intended, may be off the wall, but I'm also trying to avoid obvious ones: Exorcist, Omen, Rosemary, etc. So yeah, those are the big 3. You mentioned it. Blair Witch 2, Book of Shadows. Interesting. Exorcist 2, The Heretic. The Antichrist, aka the Tempter. So he's a big fan. Race with the Devil, which we maybe talked about today, and Black Candles, which I'm not familiar with.
I am not either.
Oh.
Huh.
He's one-upped us. Damn you, Eric. We'll get you for one-upping us with a movie we never heard of. And then one more list. Chris Stanton. His top 5. Number 5, Drag Me to Hell. Number 4 is The Possession of Joel Delaney, which I think is also maybe something that would have been on Ben's list or honorable mention. Number 3 is Don't Look Now. Number 2 is The Blair Witch Project. Does that count? So we got Blair Witch 1 and 2 on the list today. And Rosemary's Baby at number 1. So, yeah. Thanks, guys, for submitting the list. And
that's a great list.
Okay, here's the trailer for your number 4.
How long have you had this?
About 3 days.
It has been 400 years since its last reincarnation.
Any pain?
It kind of moves sometimes.
The soul of black magic is waiting to be reborn.
What's your diagnosis?
For years, man has turned his back on the supernatural.
This is hers! I'd almost describe it,
Some will deny it.
as a fetus.
Others will fear it.
On her neck?
One woman will give birth to it. The Manitou. Since the beginning of time, it has practiced the mysterious arts. Its day is near. Each hour it grows stronger. Soon it will come. The Manitou. Starring Tony Curtis on a supernatural journey into the world of avenging spirits. John! Michael Ansara.
What does a white man want with Indian magic?
A modern American Indian thrust into a savage struggle with unspeakable taboos. Susan Strasberg, living in a nightmare. Innocent people, tormented by terror. Threatened by the unknown. Trapped by an ancient horror. The Manitou. An evil that never dies. It just waits to be reborn. The Manitou.
So that was a trailer for a film called The Manitou. And, what needs to be said about this film? Well, it's not every day that you go into a hospital and you find a lump in the back of your neck, and the lump happens to be a fetus. So let's just think about just the ramifications of just something just giving birth and outside your neck anyway. The tagline is "Evil does not die; it waits to be reborn," which, it's a reasonable tagline. The reason I wanted to talk about this one in particular is that I wanted to just shine a light on basically possession films featuring other religions outside of the typical Christianity tropes that you'll see in these possession films. And this one is a little different, since this one involves Native American shamans and particular demons that are, you could say, part of Native American mythology, and that's in a very broad term is what this is. And plus, you get all of that, and you get an understanding of of just you get this. Plus, you also get lasers. So it's not every day you get to learn about Native American medicine men. And you also get to do battle with them in a Star Wars fashion. So someone had the idea and someone had the idea to do this, and someone who is kind of known, or was kind of known for coming up with these ideas that some might say were very influential to other more famous films. And this someone in particular his name is William Girdler, and he kind of did a lot in a very short amount of time. He basically lived until he was 30, and he made about 10 films. And this was his last film, and he made films basically under the knowledge, or maybe like secret knowledge. He often said that he didn't think he would live until he was 30, which was kind of a strange thing to say, and kind of a tragic thing to say. This was his big breakout, big budget moment of a film, and he got this from a particular best-selling novel by an author by the name of Graham Masterton, a British author who, before writing best-selling horror novels, was also famous for writing many sex instruction books. He had this whole history in the 70s, and actually for quite a while, actually. So you could read one of his books, like the Manitou, and later on at night, then you could read a book like, say, How to Make Love 6 Nights a Week. So he has
out my scotch.
he has range, is what I'm saying. So this book was the Manitou was a bestseller, and William Girdler was nothing if not very, very fast in basically writing, basically telling AFCO Embassy that he had the rights to this film and that he had a script, and he was telling the truth about one of those things. So he basically got the money for this film, but had to produce a script in 3 days, which is what you see is a film written in 3 days, essentially. This film has a really just an amazing cast of actors that I have always loved, and they're all in this film together, and I feel like for at least one of the actors, I think there are a few scenes in which he seems to be genuinely surprised himself that he's also in this film, and that might come off, but there are just many amazing moments that I love about this film. Just the actual possession itself is pretty amazing. The special effects are quite good by Tom Berman, and he also lent his hand on another particular special effect that I don't know is quite as successful, that also involved environmental horrors and Native American mythology, that film called Prophecy. I wouldn't say it's his best work. I would say I'd like his special effects here in this film a little bit more. There are a lot of things that you're just not going to see in many other films involving possession. You're just not going to see people fighting to the death with lasers, essentially, is what I'm saying. You're also not going to see many other films that have, say, like a frozen nurse and an exploding doctor in them. So you'll have those two things that you don't normally see in other films. All the actors are pretty well committed to their roles, even if they may, like, a moment or two seem particularly lost that they're there. I'm looking at you, Burgess Meredith. But everyone commits and is very serious, which is, I think, the best way to handle a film that just on face value might seem like a somewhat ridiculous plot. I like the fact that they take it very seriously, and also like the fact that it takes place in San Francisco. And when you look at the film, I think they probably shot there for at least a good 12 hours, I think. So they spent some time there. I am actually a pretty big fan of the film, but there is an issue with this and other films of the 70s, and I would say it could use a trim of about a good 10 to 15 minutes. So that's why it's not necessarily my favorite film of the 70s of this ilk. But other than that, it's pretty unique. It has a particularly unique viewpoint and unique visuals that you won't see actually in many of the other possession-type films of this decade. What are your thoughts on this film, Michael?
I actually have a William Girdler section. I actually really like William Girdler's movies. He's only made a few. I think he said 10, and he did those all before he was 30. Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah, he was pretty prolific.
What are we doing? He made 10 movies before he was 30. That's pretty awesome. I like his movies a lot, and the Manitou sits proudly in that section. It's a pretty classy movie, I would say, for William Girdler. I mean, I would say
yes, it is.
Grizzly is kind of classy too, in a way, in the some of the conventional stuff that's in the movie, like the sweeping scores of those movies, and it's actually a very pretty score. Do you know who did the music? I don't know offhand, but
coincidentally, actually, it was Lalo Schifrin, of course.
Lalo Schifrin, yeah, he's amazing, and of course he did the score to a movie just like a year after this that was amazing, the Amityville Horror, and
The Exorcist also as well.
So. That's great. Whatever that movie is.
Yeah, exactly.
Manitou, that's where it's at. I just love. He's just what an odd choice for the lead. I don't know. He's such an oddball person. I think Tony Curtis. He comes across as very odd, like to me in like interviews and certain things. Did you ever see those Hitchcock VHS tapes where he like hosted them?
He hosted them?
Yeah, there's like these VHS tapes that I can't remember if it was the 80s or 90s, but he was like the host of them, and it's interesting. Yeah, Tony Curtis doing that. But he was kind of weird in them, and like he had like white gloves. I remember like some weird stuff going on.
Was he actually in one of Hitchcock's movies? I can't remember him being in a Hitchcock movie.
No, of course his wife was in Psycho, but I don't remember him being in it. No. Or
if he ever did a Hitchcock Presents, I'm wondering if he did the TV show or not.
Yeah, I wonder now. But yeah, he came across very odd. He comes across like he's kind of a interesting character. He's someone who
he's very much a product of the 70s. This film is probably the most 70s of the films on my list.
Very 70s, right? Just missing a scene where they're at was it Ast? What is that?
Est.
Yeah. Just missing a scene of that, or like they're at Ashram or something. Very San Francisco, and I just love I love the scenery of the movie and the cinematography and the music. And then, of course, it's like this big setup and this crazy story, kind of Omen-like scenes in it. And then it becomes so fucking bonkers the last, I would say, like 20 good solid 20 minutes of the ending.
Yep.
Kind of goes on for a long time. But it gets so friggin' bonkers that you kind of don't know what to really make of it because it's so like insane. Like, what were these people, like, what drugs were they on when they decided to like to go to the places they go to? And of course with the effects and all the things you pointed out.
Yeah, I think he basically copped to the fact that he really liked The Exorcist and he really liked Star Wars.
Yeah, it's kind of a cross between the two. Yeah. It really is. It's weird. And I don't know. It kind of works for me. I mean, it's very 70s in that regard. Like, what? You just throw everything at the screen and see what sticks, right? Literally, things are being thrown. Like computers are being thrown. I'm gonna throw my computer at the screen. I don't know. It's just so out there, and I like all the actors, and just a fan. I just think I really dig it. So I'm glad you picked it.
Yeah, I also picked it just so that we could have like two films that we talked about today that have both Hot Lips Houlihan's in them.
That's true. Yeah, both Hot Lips Houlihan's are covered here today.
Yeah.
All right, so that was the Manitou, and here is the TV spot for my number 4.
Jeff Mills has fallen in love with a beautiful woman.
I want you to stay here with me.
You don't know what you're getting into.
Haunted by a dangerous past.
I've seen blood running down its walls.
They want to stay together.
We want her back.
But first, they've got to stay alive.
We'll get her back.
No one ever leaves us. No! Spellbinder, rated R, starts Friday. Check newspapers for a theater near you.
Okay, that's a TV spot for Spellbinder. Now, Spellbinder is a movie that I saw. I think I didn't see it in theaters. I think I saw it. I remember seeing it on home video. It wasn't. I didn't get much of a release. Looking up the release history for it, it was only released like on 300 screens, so limited release in September of 1988, and I think it came out the same week as Dead Ringers, that movie, which was very good, and the following week was Elvira, which we talk about every episode. So I wanted to mention it again here. Make sure I just wrote down. Make sure to mention Elvira, Mistress of the Dark.
And make sure that you all drink now.
That came out the following week. Yes. Every time I mentioned Elvira on the show, drink. So I just said it 3 times. So you have to have 3 drinks, 3 sips at least. Not Lori Loughlin. Kelly Preston, Tim Daly. Who else is in this? Rick Rossovich. It's basically this guy finds this woman on the street who's being abused by her ponytailed boyfriend, and then he comes to the rescue, and then he gets more than he's bargained for with this girl, because as we find out, there's this guy, this ponytailed guy, who's very evil, and he's after her and him especially for protecting her. And then we find out as more goes on, she's very cute and very sexy, and she looks good in his clothes in the morning, that there's definitely a lot more going on, because there's some occult stuff. Yes. This is an occult movie podcast, so there's definitely some occult stuff going on here. And of course, like in every 80s movie about the occult, what does our hero do to find out more about it? And what should you do if you need to find out about the occult? You go to the bookstore and you try to find information about what's going on. You find a book, of course.
There usually is an occult bookstore nearby.
Yeah. Especially, I guess, in San Francisco, you definitely would find it. LA, too. I'm sure you could find in LA. And not in New York anymore, I don't think. I think they're all gone. They're now Starbucks. I don't know where you guys are, dear listeners. Maybe look up where your nearest occult bookstore is, because you never know what will happen. You never know when you need to consort your nearest local bookstore, occult bookstore. You can't go online and look up this information, because that's cheating. You have to either go to a bookstore or go to your library and look on microfiche. Okay? Look up as much information on microfiche as possible, or go to your bookstore or library, and that's the only options to find out more information, and to find out what you're really getting involved with a sexy woman who being chased by Ponytail Man, who likes to levitate your car, your little sports car. Tim Daly has a really small sports car in this movie. It's like the tiniest sports car for such a tall guy. I always wondered about that. I guess he's like this lawyer type. He's a lawyer, and lawyers have sports cars. But he has a very tiny one. But maybe they gave him a tiny one because it's easier to make look like it's levitating. I don't know. He would seem really uncomfortable driving the car. I just always dug this movie. It's like a late night movie. I watched it a lot at night, and it really works only at nighttime, I think. This movie, it's a movie set mostly at night. I mean, there's a lot of daytime scenes too, but I feel like it's more of a nighttime in LA movie. Where he's just kind of like, he has like a secretary who kind of knows what's going on. There's always a character in this movie who like knows, but the lead guy doesn't know, because he's blinded by love and lust. But she knows right away where Kelly Preston is at, because she actually witnesses her take out a turkey with her hands or something. I remember.
Yep.
Yeah, I remember that scene. That was a great scene. And she's kind of like, she sizes her up, and she's like, "Yeah, I know," basically telling her, "I know what you're up to, and you better back off. He's my man. Tim Daly is my man." I gotta have a cast member of Wings like mentioned in this podcast once in a while, because that they were in a lot of fun 80s movies and 90s movies. I think one of them was in The Temp, right? I'm trying to remember which cast member of Wings was in The Temp.
Which cast member of Wings?
Might have been Steven Weber.
Oh, maybe. I'll remember, what is his name? Face from the A-Team is in it, isn't he? Dwight Schultz?
Yes, that's right. He is. Maybe I'm thinking of him
Huh.
too. Also, no, I think he's in both. He's also in Single White Female. But I'm mixing up my.
Yes.
I mix up. Sometimes I mix up the Wings guys, but he's good. He's good in this movie. You have to have like the kind of almost boring kind of lead. So because of all the extraordinary things going on, you give some contrast because this guy is, like I said, keep saying is over his head with this woman. I just like how it plays out, and it's kind of a very fun late night '80s movie. Directed by a woman, which is rare for the occult movie. I don't see a lot of occult movies being directed by women. A few of them were written by women. Maybe one coming up soon for me, but not many directed by women. So it was interesting seeing the female point of view a bit, especially with all these stupid guys in the movie. A lot of the guys in this movie are stupid, just straight up stupid. And Kelly Preston, she's the smart one. She knows what she's doing. And like in every '80s movie, she takes off her clothes, which is always all good. When was the last time you saw Spellbinder?
I saw it fairly recently, actually. So it's fairly fresh in my memory, and there are a few things that stand out. Kelly Preston is the most, shall we say, visually compelling person in the movie, but I would say the most compelling character in the movie is actually we find out later to be her mother, basically Mrs. Roper. Well, if anyone knows, I'm trying to remember the actress's name.
Audra Lindley.
Audra Lindley. Yeah, she is. She's like the best.
I love Mrs. Roper. I love her.
Yeah, she's even though this film in some ways I think could use like less character development and more like scenes of witchery and occult. I am also being schizophrenic about that and contradict myself by saying there are actually certain other relationships that I think could be deepened more. I think Mrs. Roper needs to get more screen time. I think she's just amazing every time she's on the screen, and it's not very many times.
You don't expect her to be scary because she's Mrs. Roper, but when she shows up, like she gives like a stare or a look, and it's kind of scary. It's kind of creepy. Like wow.
Yeah, she's definitely
she's
the scariest.
owning it. Yeah.
Surprisingly enough, when I saw the guy in the ponytail, I was thinking Elias Koteas was probably like calling his agent, wondering why he wasn't asked for this part. So if I'd seen him in that part, I think he would have been even more menacing. It seems like this particular cult very much very much enjoyed breaking glass. There's a lot of broken glass going on. The big scene, the siege inside the house, is a very it's a very, very thrilling scene. That's probably like the best part in the film, I think. The way they draw out the sacrifice at the end also is very well done.
Definitely.
The only thing that lessens the impact is that I actually think the relationship between Rossovich and Daly is not as, like, say, I don't know, it's not as close as you think it would be.
Right. Yeah.
So, the betrayal that happens, spoiler alert, happens at the end is not as shocking as it could have been, I think.
It's Rick Rossovich, so there's not going to be, it's not going to go so well.
It's not going to go so well. Yeah. That's true. So I enjoyed this film quite a bit, and I hadn't seen it in a while. The other character role that I remember really liking was like an early MC Gainey part. Also, he plays like one of Tim Daly's clients, who's the survivalist guy.
Oh yeah, that's right. I remember when my wife and I were watching it. She's like, "Oh, it's that guy." Like, yeah.
He's just sort of out of nowhere, and he's just formed character, I liked his part as well. Tim Daly has like the harder part essentially of having to like sort of be a romantic lead that sort of is being led basically by the nose. But he's a good enough actor, so. I enjoy this film quite a bit. I think Janet Greek, the director, I think she ended up doing lots of deep Babylon 5, like later on, is what she ended up doing. So didn't know too much about. That's one of those sci-fi shows that I didn't know much about, but had a cult following. So Yeah.
I need to listen to the commentary. I think she's on the commentary for it
Oh, is she?
on the Blu-ray. Yeah, so I need to listen to that.
Okay, yeah, I'll be curious to know what her thoughts were on that film. I'm trying to think about if the detective angle is sort of introduced and not too much happens with it except for the end.
Right. Yeah. There's a little bit of a payoff, but it's kind of.
Yeah.
I don't know. I didn't mind that I didn't go there because I get detective stuff gets kind of boring sometimes. So I'm kind of glad I didn't go too much into it. But then maybe I should have not even bothered introducing it. But yeah, I guess it has to be in the '80s the obligatory scene of going to the cops and no one believing you, right?
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. So.
But when Ponytail guy lets down his hair, damn, wow, he has a lot of hair. It was kind of like what's that one scene where he's lets his hair down, right? Or I don't think it's throughout the movie, but
Right, there has to be one scene where, that's how you know when someone either goes from bad to worse, I guess. So, yeah, I enjoyed this film quite a bit. I'd forgotten how much I liked it. So.
It's good '80s fun. So if you're looking for an occult movie that's, if you want something '70s and maybe a bit more serious, we have those. But if you want something silly, I would point to Spellbinder because it's good, clean '80s fun.
Yep.
And I love the ending. I like the framing of the beginning and ending. I think it's kind of clever and
Yeah, it's definitely it's good to see the pattern basically.
Right. So. Exactly. All right, so that's our number 4s, and we're going to take a little break, and we'll be back after this.
Hi, everybody. It's Ben Schur, the Retro Movie Love co-host who loves you. I am so upset that I wasn't able to come for the Occult episode of Retro Movie Love. I crashed on my couch very early, but I'm happy to be able to talk about it a little bit on my message because, as some of you know, I love witches and the occult, and I would be a feminist witch. I practically am, but I have no powers and no coven. It's so sad. I'm so alone. Anyway, let's talk about my top 5 favorite occult movies. It was almost impossible to choose. Number 5, Necromancer, Satan's Servant, starring Elizabeth Kaitan, who I loved in the late 80s and early 90s after I first saw her in Vice Academy 3 and Assault of the Killer Bimbos, both classics. She plays a beautiful college student who is gang raped by a bunch of miserable male bastards, one of whom looks so much like Bob Saget that I actually thought it was Bob Saget for years, but it wasn't. So she decides to get revenge. Yes. She sees a want ad in the newspaper for the necromancer who will do your bidding for you. And she goes to meet her, and she's this kind of hippie, bitchy, fabulous feminist witch who lives in a tent, a lot like Faye Dunaway's house in Supergirl. It might actually have been the same set. It really looked like it. And there's this amazing scene where the necromancer calls upon Satan and has devil voice, and it's hilarious, and I laughed so hard. I fucking loved it. This whole movie, I laughed so hard after the horrible rape scene, because I never like a rape scene, as you know. But she brings forth the demon in the form of Elizabeth Kaitan, the seductress, to revenge all the bastards who raped her, and it's great. It's great. I love demoness Elizabeth Kaitan. I haven't seen this movie in ages, and nobody remembers it. And I just have to buy it on DVD because I want to see it again. Okay, number 4, Witchery. So as y'all might know, this is a major kinder trauma movie for me. I saw it on HBO late at night in the early 90s when I was young, and it just freaked the shit out of me. And you know what? Every time I watch it, I'm like, oh, I'm going to watch it, laugh at this movie. And every time I watch it, I still think it's kind of creepy, even though it's notoriously bad and kind of hilarious. And the La Casa movies are just kind of like that. The next one, too, which I think was known in America as Beyond Darkness, it's really bad, but at the same time, scary and atmospheric and nothing you've ever seen before. There's nothing weirder than Witchery and Beyond Darkness. Anyway, you probably know the plot. A bunch of people come to a creepy abandoned hotel on an island and get tormented by Hildegard Neff, the German chanteuse with an amazing deep voice, who is actually a witch. or something, the reincarnation of a witch who was killed on the island years ago, and she brutally murders them because they're sinners and they're terrible people. And most notoriously, Annie Ross gets her lips sewn shut and then hung over a fireplace. And it's like, girl, Hildegard, you are so nasty for a glamorous old woman. Linda Blair and David Hasselhoff are in it. And David Hasselhoff is having fun, and Linda Blair just seems like she's like, Jesus Christ, what has my life come to? But she's still just so lovable because she's Linda Blair. And at the end, she gets possessed by Hildegard Knapp, of course, and it's kind of fabulous. Like, it's almost better than The Exorcist. Okay, number 3, The Mephisto Waltz. Now, this is a complicated movie for me because I find it a little bit boring. But it's super, super glamorous. It's about glamorous Satanists. And we all know that Satanists are the most glamorous people in the world, especially LA Satanists. It's about a composer who comes with his innocent wife to LA, never a good idea, and then gets involved with this famous composer and all of his glamorous friends in his mansion in Beverly Hills or the Hollywood Hills or something, and they're all Satanists. And they like own a boutique, I think, too. And one of them is Barbara Parkins, and I think she has a dog that she dresses up in like diamonds and like it has a mask. The dog has a mask made of diamonds. Fabulous, so fabulous, so LA. I mean, LA. I feel like everybody in LA is a Satanist, especially rich people in LA. Like I just always feel like there's Satanists all around me, and that like I could get absorbed at any time. So this movie is really accurate. It's a very accurate movie about living in Los Angeles. Number 2, Suspiria. I don't know why I have it as... Oh, I know why. Okay, yeah, because everybody had 4 and I had 5. So Suspiria is number 2, although really it's number 1. And my next one is an honorable mention. Suspiria is maybe it's one of my 3 favorite movies of all time. So beautiful. What can you even say? You've all seen Suspiria, you know. I'm not going to say the obvious. I'm going to quote Lance Vaughn on Kinder Trauma, as I usually do, because I think he's one of the best horror writers, movie writers in the entire world. I really do. I hope he's listening. And he said that Suspiria, I'm misquoting, but he said that Suspiria feels like there's magic printed on the celluloid, and that is exactly right. This movie's filled with magic. I love Joan Bennett. I love her. So elegant, such a cold bitch. You all know Jessica Harper's just my favorite, and I just worship her so much, and I want her to be in every movie, the lead in every movie, and I relate to her so much in this movie because my graduate school experience, it was Suspiria. Like, it was nothing different. Like, I watched Suspiria, and I'm like, oh, I didn't know somebody videotaped my years in graduate school. There was even a time when I was in, like, a hall, and I heard the vice chair of my department, like, saying bad shit about me. I mean, not exactly bad shit about me. It's a long story. I had requested funding that somebody else had promised me, and he was yelling about it because it wasn't in writing, but he was, like, pissed. And I really felt like he was like, we have to kill that bitch of an American girl, and I was Susie Banyan. It was terrifying, horrible. I'm so glad it's over. Okay, number 1. Well, honorable mention. I have 2. My first honorable mention is The Possession of Joel Delaney. This is a great, fucked up New York movie. Shirley MacLaine plays this total rich white bitch diva from hell who wears a lot of capes and fur hats, whose brother, played by Perry King, who I always have a crush on and who always plays the most reprehensible people in the entire world, gets like caught up in like downtown voodoo with like Hispanic people. So ominous, so offensive. But there's this amazing voodoo scene with the people, his downtown lower class Hispanic friends that's so awesome. And I'm just like, yeah, of course. Like, who wouldn't want to hang out with them rather than repressed bitch Shirley MacLaine, who, by the way, is in love with her brother. In love, like obvious, overtly. Like, she just really wants to have sex with him. So he becomes possessed by something, I don't remember by who, by some like voodoo demon priest or something, and like starts killing people. And then at the end things go really crazy. Shirley MacLaine escapes to the Hamptons, as rich people do in times of crisis like the summer when it gets hot. And he follows her there and like makes her children get naked and eat dog food and dance. And you watch it and you're like, what the fuck? How did this happen even in the 70s? Like, you just can't believe it. And it's almost too much. It like keeps me from watching the movie repeatedly. But it's such a great New York movie until then, and I love it. And my favorite part of the movie is the opening credit sequence, which is like the credits over close-ups of hors d'oeuvres on a buffet table. And then like just like a glamorous New York party. But the hors d'oeuvres are very 70s, and I love that somebody's like, oh, let's do the credits over close-ups of hors d'oeuvres. That seems appropriate for a movie about possession. And then my final honorable mention is The Lords of Salem, which I didn't want to make Michael and Kieran talk about because I know at least how Michael feels about Rob Zombie movies. I love Rob Zombie, except for Halloween. I love Halloween too. I'm not even going to get into it, but I just love this movie so much. I think it's his masterpiece. I think it's maybe my favorite horror movie of the last 10 years. So atmospheric. Judy Geeson, Patricia Quinn, and Dee Wallace, and Meg Foster. Such beautiful, beautiful, beautiful feminist witches. I love it. And if you want to hear more about my thoughts on The Lords of Salem, keep an eye out. I'm going to plug a book that I'm going to be in called The Cinema of Rob Zombie, The Social and Political Philosophy of Horror. I don't know when it's actually being released. I think sometime this year. I have a chapter in it called All of Them Witches, Feminist Nostalgia, and Rob Zombie's The Lords of Salem, because I believe this is a feminist masterpiece, and at the end, the witches take over and create a feminist, womanist utopia against men. That's not exactly what happens in the end, but that's what I choose to think happens, okay, so accept it. So, thank you all for listening. Sorry this was so long, and that I wasn't able to make it this time, but I look forward to talking to you all soon. Thanks. Bye-bye.
Okay, we're back, and hope you enjoyed that. And here's the trailer for your number 3, Kieran.
My baby! Not your baby, our baby, Satan's baby!
There are things in heaven and on earth beyond the comprehension of man. Call them what you will. The occult, witchcraft, devil worship.
Satan! Behold thy supplicant! Arise and come in, child. Enter for yet another lifetime in the Brotherhood of Satan.
The Brotherhood of Satan. A demon spirit of madness and murder holds a California town in the grip of terror.
My God, they're all mad.
Witches. Black artisans, celebrants of the Black Mass.
A story of contemporary family witchcraft in California. The Brotherhood of Satan, rated GP.
Okay, that was the trailer for The Brotherhood of Satan. So we mentioned briefly a particular film called The Witchmaker, and the people behind this film, the writer and / producer and co-stars, they're kind of known for a few other more well-known publicized things. L.Q. Jones and Alvy Moore. Alvy Moore is particularly known for being a Green Acres alum. And L.Q. Jones, basically, he's been in a bunch of Peckinpah movies, and he also wrote and directed a little film called A Boy and His Dog.
Oh yeah, I like that movie. That's good.
Yeah, so this film is sort of like a follow-up in a way to his other previous film, The Witchmaker, as far as following in the same line of, talking about, Satan. This film's a unique film for many different reasons. It's kind of at this weird sort of part in the early 70s where the people on the screen don't necessarily quite match the people that you see on TV. Like there's not like much of like a hippie contingent or anything like that. This film is sort of set in the present, it seems, but it seems also kind of lost in time as well. And it seems to the characters are kind of Mayberry-ish, and also there's like city town folk that come into this town that they can't leave, and they seem to be sort of 60s kind of Mad Men, Bewitched era kind of people. So it doesn't quite reflect the actual time per se, which just adds to its sort of disorienting feel. This film can basically be described, I think someone described it as Mayberry meets Rosemary's Baby, which seems to be a pretty good way to describe it, I think. There's this family, basically a father, his daughter, who actually is more famous for being, shall we say, fake Jan Brady.
Yes.
She's embraced it, so it's okay to call her that. So it's basically him, his daughter, and his girlfriend drive past this horrific accident that happens at the beginning of the film. The beginning of the film is part of this really strange trend that you're not quite sure if you saw correctly what you just saw. There's this, it starts out with this toy tank that is in close-up, and it cuts basically to this real tank that basically tramples and crushes this car out on the road, and everyone in there does not survive except for this one particular kid who gets up and walks away down the road with some other kids. And this is part of a particular trend that the family that drive by happen to run into. They see the scene of the accident. They go to this nearest town. The nearest town is full of people that are kind of 2000 Maniacs-ish, at least at first. And then they realize that they can't leave, and in fact, no one has been able to leave the town. And kids have started to come up missing, and when they come up missing, their parents and relatives are usually end up getting killed in the process. So there's this whole situation that they run into, and what the Brotherhood of Satan that they're talking about refers to a particular, shall we say, conspiracy involving children and old people. And that's kind of all I need to sort of talk about without giving too much away. The main particular person that you sort of find out right away as part of the conspiracy is also the town doctor, and he's played by Strother Martin. And Strother Martin just really, he was an amazing actor. And he and LQ Jones were also best friends in real life as well. And there's this weird, it's very, very, you can definitely see that it's very, very, very low budget. The special effects, there's just a lot of just very creative camera work and editing that has to take place in order. And the editing is such that things kind of happen in a disorienting sort of fashion that I think just sort of adds to just the uneasy feeling you get when you watch the film. And it's just a very unusual, low budget, strange movie that has a great ending and basically has toys that kill, and that's all I can say about that as well. I'm a big fan of the film in spite of its budget limitations, in spite of, say, children actors who are definitely not professional. But that even the elderly actors are kind of the template for Rosemary's Baby was definitely in effect in this particular film, in that just showing old people looking a certain way just automatically makes them more menacing for some reason, and it's with a good reason too, as you'll find out in this film. But I'm actually just a big fan of this film. I think it's just an underrated 70s possession occult movie that I don't know if many people have seen. What are your thoughts on it?
It was definitely one of those movies that I watched late at nights on TV. Mm-hmm. It was I feel it was on a lot, and I just I dug it. I haven't seen it in a while. I tried putting the Blu-ray on because I have it on Blu-ray. It's a double bill with Mr. Sardonicus. Mm-hmm. It was like a cheapy double.
It's a Mill Creek one, right?
Mill Creek, yeah. And I put it in, but I think the player that I put it in, the multi-region player that I have, is not working properly anymore because it's not playing certain movies and it stopped playing multi-region. So I have to figure out what I'm going to do with that.
That's not a good multi-region player.
Yeah, that's not a good multi-region player at all. So it's on its way out, I guess, and I wasn't able to watch it. And on the other TV, I didn't want the kids, to watch Satan movies. Yeah, well, they have a few years to watch some Satan movies.
Yeah.
Some of the more like kid-friendly Satan movies. Yeah, I don't think this is one of them, even though it was rated GP probably, right?
It's definitely a PG film, yeah, and there are a lot of kids in the film.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't know if this might be the kind of film that might give them ideas.
Right. Well, I like the ideas I do like the ideas of the movie, like the toys and the kids and the killing, and a lot of those great actors, L.Q. Jones and all the ones you mentioned. I remember liking them, and I like the vibe of the movie. This very 70s vibe. It's kind of slow paced, I remember at times, but definitely picks up in certain spots, and it's kind of like that movie, that very 70s movie. You either appreciate or you don't.
Right.
But if you're into cult movies, you probably like the ones from the 70s because I feel like that's the time period when they really came into full bloom. Of course, post Rosemary's Baby. So it's the 70s, and I think this one, I think, was early 70s, 71, around there. 71?
Yeah, 71, I believe, yeah.
Early 70s, so they were kind of really kicking to gear with movies like this one, and it was. And I remember liking it. I definitely liked it, and I need to revisit it. I did look over a review of it on the. Do you remember that website Camp Blood?
Mm-hmm. Is that still running?
I don't think it is because I think the last post was from like 2014.
Oh, okay.
So I think maybe that the reviewer is doing other things. I don't know, but there's a hysterical review of this movie on there. He liked the movie a lot, but I think he was mostly in lust with the priest in the movie.
Oh yeah.
Mentions the very 70s underwear model priest. I don't know.
Right. Yeah, he's the young priest basically. That he's kind of almost like the closest that this film gets to like a representation of the crazy youth of today almost. So
right.
And he's the priest character. So. It's hard to like find information so much on the film. Like even when L.Q. Jones ever gets interviewed, everyone asks him about either Sam Peckinpah or A Boy and His Dog. So I think there was like an interview. Do you remember the Psychotronic Video magazine?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I think he had like a 2-part interview there, and I was trying to like find like some sort of issue. I used to have a bunch of back issues, but I couldn't find them in time to like see if he had something to say in particular about making that film. Because I'd be curious to know what his experiences were on that.
Is he still around?
I think he is actually. I think he's like close to 90 at this point. But yeah, he's still around.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Okay, so that was the Brotherhood of Satan, and here. I think here's I don't know, there's no trailer because this was a TV movie, but here's a spot of some kind or a bumper. Here we go.
ABC. Friday. Movie. A world television premiere motion picture. The ABC Friday Night Movie.
Melissa Sue Anderson is a young woman caught up in a bizarre world of satanic worship.
Serve me now as I serve you.
Midnight Offerings.
So this is Midnight Offerings. The ABC, I think it was a Friday movie. It aired on February 21st, 1981. Early 80s TV movie about the cults with two big stars at the time, or TV stars at the time, with Melissa Sue Anderson and Mary McDonough, both of Little House on the Prairie and The Waltons, respectively. And you get witches facing off one another in a TV movie in the 80s. Of course, I was hooked with that premise alone. I enjoyed it. It's one of those TV movies where maybe not a lot happens, But when it does kick into gear, it really gets going, and it's really exciting. A certain scene in Woodshop, gotta say, really is super exciting and a lot of fun. I like those kinds of movies. I love a lot of the '80s TV horror movies. They just kind of, to me, were just fun and to watch, and seeing your favorite stars in these little movies. And these premises. There was an Occult, I think, Initiation Sarah in the '70s.
Yep.
That was a lot of fun. There were quite a few. Of course,
The Spell is among them.
The Spell. I like The Spell a lot. I think kind of the lead, not saying the lead actress, but the characters kind of bitch. But I do like that movie a lot. And of course, Stranger in Our House. I mentioned that earlier. I really like that one. That's a lot of fun. And this one, Marion Ross is in it. Gordon Jump, Patrick Cassidy of the Cassidy guys, the clan. He's there he's the football hunk, if that's right, if I recall. Who vies for the attention between the two women. Of course, they're fighting over him, and that will lead to lots of witchery in the final act of the movie, when they're really letting their inner witch out. Melissa Sarandon is great at playing evil. She kind of has a bit of a bitch face, so it works to her advantage. She was kind of bitchy. I know she was a little bit, she was kind of that character on Little House, which is not a nice thing to say about a blind character, but she was kind of bitchy. I remember just watching that and just thinking she was kind of bitchy. So she inhabits this role really well. I like her a lot. I like Melissa Sarandon a lot, of course. She was in another movie in 1981. 1981 was kind of her year. She was in Happy Birthday to Me, where she's not bitchy. She's playing the lead. Well, I guess you could say final girl. Girl in the slasher movie.
You could say that
in a way. And she's fun to watch there, and she's especially fun in this movie because she's really just kind of lets it all out. She lets her inner bitch out, and she's really good at it. And it's one of those Stephen J. Cannell. I liked all those. When it was Stephen J. Cannell, you're in for some fun. This was the one that was written by a woman, Juanita Bartlett, who did a lot of like TV in the '80s that you may know, like Greatest American Hero and Scarecrow and Mrs. King and the Rockford Files. She was responsible for a lot of those, writing and producing. So she had her stamp on that. And this movie, this was shot in Manhattan Beach. I think it was called Ocean Valley High School. I think it was actually shot in Miracosta High School in Manhattan Beach, so not too incredibly far away from where I am now in Long Beach. I wish I was around to watch them back back then, and to see the mom from Family. Happy Days. It's been a while since I watched it. I tried watching it again. Another movie that didn't work on my player.
Oh, really?
I have it on DVD, but it's a DVD-R, of course. This movie was never released officially in any way. Yeah. So it's only bootleggy kind of things, and it's on YouTube in several forms, and not very good transfers at all. So
they're not very good transfers. I saw one recently, and
this is ripe for getting re-released on DVD, Blu-ray, all that stuff. I don't know who has the masters. I mean, who has all the ABC movies of the week? Who has those? I don't know. Maybe ABC. Who knows? Somewhere in a vault somewhere, rotting away. Someone needs to rescue a lot of these TV movies, not forget about them. I don't think they do particularly well on DVD because a lot of people, I don't know what the mentality of TV movies is, like, oh, because it aired for free, why would you want to pay for it? But then this movie has never been released in any way, so...
Did it not ever get like a foreign DVD release?
It might have. I don't think it has. I really don't know. I mean, I feel like I've never seen it around. And I've never seen a good version of it.
It's been a while. Yeah,
crappy versions of it. So I wish it would. But this is my part 1 of 3. But I want to hear your thoughts before I get to the other part 2 of it.
I love this film a lot as well too. It's just a part of the running theme in this film, and with the other film that you're going to talk about, is just about women trying to like fit in high school, women that are like different. And it's just a great theme to explore, and what better way to explore it by using the occult as like this backdrop or as this power that they have. So I've always been very big on that, in particular because these films don't necessarily rely on like say some male figure that is like say like their cult leader or anything like that they have to like follow. So it's somewhat more this film and the other film we're going to talk about are more feminist in that it's just more about women with their powers rather than women with their powers. Oh, but there's this other guy who is behind it all. So it's not like that, which is something that I thought was pretty cool to see, and particularly for the early '80s, I think that's also something that had to be applauded. I think, they're just the dual. The duel that happens throughout the you could say like the half of the film, the last half of the film is pretty impressive to watch, and Melissa Sue Anderson is great, and there's this whole great mother-daughter dynamic that she has that's like really strong, I think, as well too. So I'm a big fan of that. I think everyone in the film, I think there's like a small cameo with Vanna White also. I think she's just
she's there.
She's like a cheerleader, I think.
Right.
Say a cheerleader scene. So there's just a lot of familiar faces in this film, and as far as it's not just a strong TV movie; it's just a strong movie to watch. So I'm glad we could revisit this one again.
Exactly, and because it's 1981, it has that strong slasher connection. Because obviously Melissa Sue Anderson was in Happy Birthday to Me, Mary Beth Madonna was in Mortuary, which I think was initially going to be going to come out in '81, but ended up in '83. And then also Kurt Ayers from Mortuary is in the movie too. So you have a dual Mortuary connection.
Right.
And then finally Dana Kamel is in the movie too.
That's right. Yeah, that's right. She's in the opening scene
from Friday the 13th Part 3 and what's the other one? Sweet 16.
Sweet 16, yeah.
Yeah, and she was in another movie in '81 that I liked a lot called Rivals. Playing, it's kind of a similar story where like, the new boy in town kind of has trouble fitting in, and this is obviously the new girl in town. So I like those kinds of movies. Those simple.
Those are good. Yeah, that one is less supernatural based. Sounds like.
Yeah, no, there's definitely no supernatural stuff. Dana Kamel has a much bigger part in it. She plays the object of affection for the new boy in town, and but she has a jerky boyfriend, man with a van type, who wants to cause some trouble.
Of course.
So I like those simple stories, and of course when you throw in powers, hell yeah,
right.
I'm really into it.
Yeah.
So that's why this one movie always stuck out to me, and I like that you mentioned that it is from the feminist point of view, and I just take that. I take that about it. And this next movie, which is definitely would fit into that vein, is a movie. Here's the trailer. You may know this one.
To the other kids at St. Bernard Academy, they were the girls who didn't belong.
Whatever you do, stay away from them.
Why?
They're witches.
But after years of being on the outside...
Why'd you lie about me?
I don't want to go out with you again. Please, stop begging. It's pathetic.
4 girls are about to discover the dark side.
You ever heard of invoking the spirit? Black magic.
We can make things happen. I mean, this is it. This is real.
Columbia Pictures welcomes you to the witching hour.
Check it out. Her spell is working. Sit.
Just like everybody else. Girls, watch out for those weirdos.
We are the weirdos, mister.
Yep, that's The Craft. A 90s movie. How dare I? How dare I talk about going from 70s and 80s movies into the 90s? But I think this fits.
And 90s music, too.
Very 90s music. I mean, it fits very well into this canon because, girls trying to fit in. Same story, basically, as Midnight Offerings. And then she has great powers that she just kind of needs to hone and hopefully not do evil with, but there are girls who do want to abuse their power, namely Fairuza Balk, who kind of preys on some of the weaker girls, like Party of Five, Nev Campbell,
Rachel True,
Yeah, they you might have heard of Nev Campbell by this point, especially in '96. Later in '96, she had a.
And especially there's a certain cast member in that film that she gets to know intimately in another film.
That's right, Skeet Ulrich and Nev Campbell in the same movie twice in '96. So yeah, it has she has Fairuza Balk kind of preying on those weaker characters and kind of them needing a fourth person to utilize in their coven of witches, and of course Robin Tunney plays the fourth, and she has great powers that she's not really super aware of. I mean, she must be aware of some of it. I can't remember if she is kind of that aware of it in the beginning, but she definitely, as the movie goes along, she definitely has.
She's aware. There's sort of like a revelation that she, because of the powers, she talks about how she's, attempted suicide, right?
And, that's right. Yes, yeah.
Yeah, so there's that element.
And she just kind of comes into her own, and Fairuza wants to exploit that power, and that she's the newfound power because of Robin Tunney joining their group, and when you use powers for evil, it definitely will come back to you. I would say if I had powers, I would try to do my best to use them for good. I know I can't always use them for good.
I can't make that kind of promise.
Yeah, I mean, I would try my best.
Yeah, just try.
Much like Scotch, I'm trying not to drink the whole bottle. I promise not to. But who knows? Who knows what happens? I kind of wish I had these powers, but yeah, very 90s movie, but that simple story, which kind of hooks me from the beginning, and I really enjoyed it. I think the actors are all good. I think Robin Tunney is a good lead, and I think Fairuza Balk's a good antagonist. She's
great.
She does, she goes from like sort of normal. I mean, I would never put Fairuza Balk into the normal category. She's definitely the outcast in the movie, but then she kind of goes batshit crazy in certain parts, and I like those highs and lows that she goes through. I think she's a wonderful actress. I think she's really good at portraying that. I know she was really into some of this, like she was a Wiccan, I believe.
She was a practicing Wiccan, yes.
Practicing Wiccan who actually had an occult store at some point, which is interesting. So she was really into it, and I believe she tried to keep everything on the level in terms of what she was doing. And when you're making a big Hollywood movie, which this is, not everything is going to be exactly accurate, so you can't can't really fault that for it's a film, so It's not going to be accurate, but I think she tries her best to portray it accurately, and I think the actors take it seriously and they do a good job, and so I think it's just a fun movie. I think again, it gives you everything you need from a story like this, but also makes it pretty accessible. If I was a teenage girl in the 90s, I would have fallen head over heels for The Craft. I was not a teenager. I was not quite. I was an older boy. What was I, like 21 when this came out?
So I was a little bit older.
Yeah, so I'm not like the target demographic for The Craft, even though it was an R-rated movie, and I like that it was an R-rated movie kind of for teenagers. They don't make them anymore, really, anymore. I would have been really happy to have The Craft in my life, and I was happy. And I'm not ashamed to admit that I do love The Craft.
Yeah, I'm not either. I enjoy the film quite a bit. Yeah, the cast is, they're all pretty evenly matched. I think this is one of Robin Tunney's first films, too, if I remember correctly. From what I remember, she didn't think necessarily that she actually wanted to play the Nev Campbell part initially. And then I guess the director had to convince her that actually she was right for her part, which is kind of unusual. Usually somebody in casting or when they're auditioning would like to have the larger part. But
yeah, definitely.
But yeah, there are a lot of interesting other actors in there. I think the whole backstory with Fairuza's family life is really, shall we say, fraught with stuff going on. Her mom is played by Helen Shaver, who you were just mentioning, the Amityville Horror, and also Believers. I think she's in that as well.
Yeah, she always shows up in things. I like
yeah, she's very good too. And actually, the abusive stepdad guy is what's his name? John Kapelos, the guy who's the janitor from Breakfast Club.
Yeah, 16 Candles. Yeah.
He's great in that too. And I think if I remember correctly, the racist girl who taunts Rachel is it's Christine Taylor is who it is.
Right. The other Marsha Brady.
The other Marsha Brady, yeah. I've always liked Andrew Fleming's movies. He's made quite a few interesting ones, actually.
Yeah, I do. Yeah, like Threesome, he did that.
Threesome did Bad Dreams, which is kind of mixed, but I still actually like it. And he did Dick also, that Richard Nixon film. I
love Dick.
Yeah, it's a pretty amazing film. That's the first time I never really watched Dawson's Creek, so I didn't really know how good Michelle Williams was until I saw that film. She was pretty amazing in that film.
She's great.
This is just a great, fun film just to watch, running similar themes to Midnight Offerings, with a lot more with a bigger special effects budget, just a bigger all-around budget, obviously. And Fairuza Balk is just always fun to watch, and she can never do any wrong as far as I'm concerned. So, yeah, I love this film. So I'm glad we got to talk about this film as well.
All the stuff with the bugs and snakes and that all freaked me out. I remember.
Yeah,
there's a lot. Really grossed me out.
Mm-hmm. And stuff involving mirrors too, I believe. So
that's right. Yeah.
So, I just love this film.
There's more mirrors coming up in this podcast, by the way.
Yeah. That's right.
I love mirrors. All right. I'm going to read off some more lists before I forget them. James Benge, his number 5 is the Mephisto Waltz. Number 4 is Satan's School for Girls. Number 3 is Summer of Fear. Number 2 is Midnight Offerings. And his number 1 is Crowhaven Farm. And runner-up was a TV movie, Something Evil. I forgot about that one. It's been a while since I've seen that. It's the Steven Spielberg movie.
Yeah, I saw Crowhaven Farm recently too, and that's actually a pretty decent TV movie as well.
Yeah, it is. I haven't seen that in a while. I remember liking that a lot. There's a lot of they're mostly TV movies. They're all TV movies. No, Mephisto Waltz is not a TV movie, but they're all everything else on this list was a TV movie.
Although Mephisto Waltz, I think, is a Quinn Martin production, if I remember correctly.
Oh, that's right. I think that was a movie we were going to discuss tonight.
Mm-hmm.
Love that one. All right, Jeff Nelson of Scream Factory. His number 5 is the Amityville Horror. His number 4 is The Fury. His number 3 is The Exorcist. His number 2 is The Sentinel. And his number 1 is Carrie. And he has a distinction of being able to release at least a lot of those on Blu-ray, which is pretty awesome.
Yep.
And Brad Yasuda, The Kingdom, Lars von Trier's version. The Exorcist 3, The Evil Dead, Oculus, Rosemary's Baby, and honorable mentions go out to Don't Be Afraid of the Dark, the 70s version, of course, Lights Out, both the short and the movie, The Omen from the 76, The Exorcist. Thank God there hasn't been a remake of that yet, but I'm sure there will be. I think they're doing an Exorcist TV show, aren't they, or something like that?
They are, yeah.
Jesus.
They already had an Omen TV show recently, I think, too.
That didn't last. So let's do The Exorcist. The Fury, which is mentioned a lot today. The Sentinel, The Believers, Big Trouble in Little China. Yeah, I could see that. And Suspiria. And John Philip Duhan. Number 5 is Burnt Offerings. Number 4 is The Spell. Here, you mentioned The Spell. Number 3 is The Omen. Number 2 is Rosemary's Baby. And number 1 is Don't Be Afraid of the Dark. And Daniel Archer. His number 5 is Big Trouble in Little China. Number 4 is Candyman. Number 3 is Suspiria. Number 2 is The Witches of Eastwick. And his number 1, Twin Peaks Fire Walk With Me. I saw this at least 6 times when it came out and never understood all the hate it received. I'm very happy to see it has undergone a critical reevaluation since its release. Maybe not the most obvious choice for a cult movie, but I can't think of a scarier otherworldly monster than Bob. That's true. I agree.
Yeah.
And then Celeste Heike, her number 5 is Satan's Cheerleaders. Number 4 is Mark of the Devil. Number 3 is Sentinel. Number 2 is The Wicker Man. And number 1 is Suspiria. And her honorable mentions, go to Simon, King of the Witches, Season of the Witch from 1973, of course, and The Craft. All right, thank you, Celeste. Thank you, everyone. And let's move on to our number 2s. Here is yours.
God the Father commands thee. God the Son commands thee. God the Holy Ghost commands thee.
Con Claudio Brook. David Silva. Tina Romero. Susana Camini. Adriana Roer. Tina French. Alucarda, dirigida por Juan López Moctezuma.
So what you just heard might have been a finely tuned, edited, or the original incredibly long trailer for the not so incredibly long but incredible film Alucarda. Now, Alucarda I've recently heard about maybe about 5-10 years ago. I was sort of looking like I often do when I don't have much to do, looking through my Psychotronic encyclopedia of film, and I was reading about this particular film, which I remember actually being released, I think around here as, is it Sisters of Death or Sisters of Satan? There was one of those titles. I think it was Sisters of Satan, but I believe, if I remember, the box, even the box for the DVD, says that this film has, what's the best way to describe it? I'm going to look at the video box right here. It says, more blood, loud screaming, and nudity than any other film that I can think of.
Wow.
And, I would say, I guess if you combine all 3 elements, I would say that actually holds true. You could probably say that there are other films that have more of those individual elements, but putting all 3 of those together in one film makes this film a unique viewing experience. Now, with the screaming part, I would imagine people, I know some people have issues with films, and this kind of happens in the 70s in particular, where there is, and with the horror films, there's quite a bit of screaming that goes on. I guess there's a particular massacre in a particular state, I think, that some people have issues with the screaming, from what I understand. And this film sort of starts off at a particular, shall we say, pitch of screaming, and then doubles down on the screaming, and then decides to double down on the double down, and then it just goes on and on. The film itself is just it takes place, I believe, in the 19th century, actually, in Mexico, and it's one of those weird films where everything seems from a different time period. There seems to be like multiple different time periods sort of like fighting for supremacy in this film. But there's like just 70s, just intense sex, blood, and death that goes on in this film, in which everything is just looks like it's just from a different world, a different century. The film takes place in a orphanage in a convent. And the two main characters, these two girls, have very particular loaded names. One is the title character, Alucarda. Don't know what that means backwards. And then the other one is Justine, which, if anyone's ever read any de Sade, would know that what's about to happen to Justine in this film.
I just think of Justine Bateman, actually.
Oh, you do? Okay.
Yeah.
Justine Bateman and Justine and de Sade are two very different people. And this film kind of plays around with sort of particular elements of the vampire in novels, in particular novels like Carmilla and Bram Stoker's Dracula, but it's not particularly a film about Dracula or vampires per se. There's a particular great scene involving a coffin, but it's not really a vampire film. It's more of a possession film. The two characters are orphans in this convent, and the convent is one of the stranger convents you'll probably ever see. It looks like it takes place it looks like in the inside of a cave, basically, is where this convent seems to be located. And everything inside the cave seems to have been, seems like the convent sort of sprouted like stalactites and stalagmites, from the cave. And all of a sudden there's this convent sort of appeared. It's just a very striking example. And the film is a short film. I think it's under 80 minutes, but a lot sort of happens in this film, and a lot of different sort of literary ideas about, conflicts between, medicine, modern medicine, and religion. It's a particularly anti-religious cleric film. The strangest thing you can see, this film reminds you of like films like The Devils, in which possession happens, and everyone really there's a particular theatrical, almost silent film kind of element to the way that the people act in this film. But it's kind of disorienting to watch, because you're watching a sound picture, but everyone seems to be sort of acting in a particular heightened, exaggerated way. But it's kind of appropriate because of all the craziness that goes on in the film. The two main characters are very, very compelling, very great performances. And there's also this sort of a weird kind of religious lesbian undertone triangle that takes place with one of the nuns that brings in Justine into the convent. So there's this very, very compelling triangle that happens between those three, and it's just an assault on the senses, I think, and in the best possible way. And a lot happens. There's a lot of blood, nudity, which has been explained before, and also a lot of fire as well. And I don't know, I just really love everything about this film, including its just excessive moments. And I don't know, I haven't really heard of too many people talking about this film, so I'm just sort of curious what your thoughts are on this.
Yeah, I didn't make any lists today, but I've seen it. And again, another movie I haven't seen in a while. I have to do a refresher on some of these movies. But I remember it being crazy, like kind of like a lot of those elements you mentioned, and kind of very atmospheric, for sure. Definitely gets the atmosphere right. A lot of the Spanish horror movies and Mexican, those Latin horror movies just kind of really get the atmosphere right, and just kind of take you to another world.
Mm-hmm.
And the time period, and I just really like that about it. I remember liking that about it, and just being kind of impressed by that, and all the insanity that comes in a lot of these movies, especially of the 70s. They don't make them anymore like this, huh?
Yeah, they're kind of a timepiece. So
yeah, definitely of a time. And I have to see it again to get a refresher of of what I absolutely liked about it at the time. But I remember just being kind of like, wow, that movie that was pretty crazy. I remember seeing it not too far off from like Satan's Blood and kind of maybe mixing them up a little bit, even though they're pretty different. But I remember they both came out on DVD. Did Mondo Macabro put them both out?
I know Alucarda's on Mondo Macabro. I don't know if
Yeah,
Satan's Blood is.
I think I remember Mondo Macabro maybe putting out both of them, and like I got promos of them maybe, and watching both of them and thinking they were both pretty impressive movies. So I just maybe need to. I don't know if I have it still. I might still have it somewhere in my collection. I have to look. Actually, no, I did look and I didn't have it. That's why I didn't watch it again. But I do have still have Satan's Blood. For some reason, I don't have Alucarda, but I need to give it another go and get into it again. Hopefully, it's been too long.
Yeah, the background is interesting. I think the guy who directed it, he started out as a theater producer and radio producer as well, and then he got introduced to Jodorowsky, I think. So I believe he produced his first two films, I think Fando and Lis and El Topo. So you can sort of see that kind of Jodorowsky element in this film in particular.
Yeah, it's definitely of that vein, kind of like almost art house horror in a way, but yeah.
But with just a lot of blood also as well. So just so much blood. It's just very. I don't know. I just really love the film, and I just don't know if people have watched it often enough. So.
I'm glad you brought it up. Do you have any more background on it? Or?
The only other big thing, I guess, there's this guy Claudio Brook who starred in it. He plays two parts, but he did a bunch of Buñuel films and other films like that. He was also famous for he left a big impression on Guillermo del Toro, and so he had him play, I guess, the main part in Kronos. Also, he's the old man in that.
Wow, yeah, I didn't make that connection. I remember seeing Kronos when that came out and enjoying that. I didn't know that was him. Cool. All right. Here is the TV spot for my number 2.
On a dream vacation, witness an unspeakable evil.
I sure think they killed her.
Frank, they've seen it. And get trapped in an unbelievable nightmare. Peter Fonda and Warren Oates race with the devil. When you race with the devil, you'd better run for your life. Race with the Devil, rated PG.
Okay, Race with the Devil. Now, this is a movie that I watched when I was a kid. I know my sister and I rented it from the video store. It was like a Key Video. Do you remember Key Video? They put it out. And like, okay, Race with the Devil. What are we getting into? A racing movie? Is it a Cannonball Run movie? What is it? In the horror section, okay, Cannonball Run meets Amityville Horror. Okay, let's do it. I don't know what our thinking was back then. That's what I'm imagining. What we were thinking, like what it was going to be like. And yeah, it was pretty freaky for us. It was like a lot of fun because it's basically one long chase movie. Like a Cannonball Run movie or one of those movies, but with devil worshippers and Satan worshippers and all that stuff, with an occult chasing after these guys in a Winnebago. Two guys, Peter Fonda and Warren Oates, in a Winnebago with Loretta Swit and is it Kay Parker?
Laura Parker,
Laura Parker, sorry, yeah, and they're on the run from these guys. They this is what happens when you go down certain routes in this country. You will get into some trouble when you think you want to get off the main road. You might run into some bad folk who want to do some bad things with you. And Yeah, this kind of stuff scared me when I was a kid because, wow, there's all these cults out there that are trying to kill me. Especially if I get it in a Winnebago with my old lady. Can't do that.
The worst thing is that they're cults that are mobile.
That's right. Yes,
they have various different. They're not just stationary. Also, they'll actually follow you.
They're following you. There's a lot of them, and they're keeping tally. They know where you are. They know your next move, and you may get some rest. You may take a stop at a resort for Winnebagos and just have fun in the pool, and then get looked over by creepy old men. And then get kind of spooked out, and then, I just love this movie. It's a lot of fun. It's like Peter Fonda and Warren Oates play off really well together, and the women they do a great job playing. Yeah, they're kind of not written very well.
They're not written.
They're not written very well, but yeah, they do their best with the material, I think. And I just love a movie that doesn't really stop to become boring or procedural or anything. It just becomes really just a chase. They were from one set piece to another. Really, there's some slight lulls with some cops and stuff, but that's about it. I mean, really, it's really just one long chase movie, and I really respect that. And yeah, the cult stuff really scared me, and what an ending, man.
Mm-hmm.
Love it.
Yeah, it's a great ending. Yeah, it's just a great. You can tell that Warren Oates and Peter Fonda really like each other's company, and they have this. It's, I believe. Oh, the other thing too. I realized they have a business, I guess, right? It's Peter Fonda is he's a motorbike racer. Is that what he does?
Yeah, he's the grown version of the dirt bike kid.
He's basically a grown version of the dirt bike kid, exactly. And I think Warren Oates runs a shop, I believe, that sponsors him. I think that's what it is. There's a scene when they're about getting ready to go off on their trip, and he runs by and talks to his fellow employees. And I think he calls one of them LQ, which I thought was funny. So I thought that might have been just a bit of an in joke, since I think Warren Oates and Mr. Jones have been in a few movies together. There's the other. Speaking of evil speak, you had the other great character actor, R.G. Armstrong, in this film as well, and that's one of the first films I can remember seeing him in, actually, as a kid as well. And he's a pretty imposing figure as well. It's great stunt work. I think Peter Fonda did most of his stunts, I believe, including the stuff involving the rattlesnakes, which were pretty. Yeah, I think he was at that point in the 70s where he was doing a lot of these type of action movies. I think he was pretty accustomed to doing his own stunt work. It's just really, it's a great, just a great chase movie, and with devil worshippers kind of everywhere. There seems to be this theme, like this and the other Brotherhood of Satan movie, where stretches of road along the southwest and south seems to be where all the Satan happens. It seems to be what we're saying with these films.
It's true, California and then Texas and just going to the south. It scared me. Oh man, it's all full of evil cults. I'm sure there's a lot of good cults and.
Yeah, and
our focus today is on, of course, horror movies that have mostly evil cults or misunderstood cults. But
misunderstood, I would say.
There's some good cults that are perfectly fine.
Exactly.
Yes. Not in Race with the Devil though; they're bad. They're bad.
No, those ones are. The directors really. I've liked a lot of his work too. He was also a pretty good actor as well.
That's right. He's the attendant guy, right, in the movie?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he had a pretty prolific career too, but I think it was cut fairly short, but he made a lot of interesting films too. I've always loved this film, and you're right, it has one of the best endings too. One that stands out in a whole litany of 70s downbeat endings, of which there are many. Yeah. This one really stands out, actually, because it just happens very quickly. It's one of those. It happens quickly while in slow motion.
That's right. Yes.
Which you don't think that it's possible to do that at the same time, but it manages that feat. So.
Yeah, Warren Oates. I like Warren Oates' expressions. Like, oh boy, if he's like fucking worried, it's really bad. It's like Warren Oates never worries, right?
Yeah, exactly.
It's paired. I have it on DVD only. I don't have it on Blu-ray, but I know it's paired on Blu-ray with Dirty Mary, Crazy Larry.
That's right. There's another Scream Factory, right?
Yeah. Or Shout Factory or whatever. That has a pretty great ending too. With Peter Fonda, that movie, they pair very well together with their endings, their surprise shock endings.
Yeah.
Great films. All right, so that was Race with the Devil, and let me just read off some more lists. Finish them off. Let's finish off these lists.
Okay.
Scott Pliskin, his number 5 is Devil's Reign. Melty Faces, yay. Number 4 is Land of the Minotaur. I don't think I've seen that.
It's been a long time. I think it's Peter Cushing.
Oh, cool.
I think, yeah.
3 is Simon, King of the Witches. 2 is Rosemary's Baby, and his number 1 is The Devil Rides Out. David Assassino, his number 5 is Damned in Venice.
What?
Yeah. Not the only one.
Crazy.
His number 4 is The Incubus. His number 3 is Midnight Offerings. His number 2 is Don't Panic. And his number 1 is The Haunting of Julia. I really like The Haunting of Julia. I haven't seen that in a while.
Yeah, I haven't seen that in a while. That's a good one.
And R. Alashan, his list, he wrote some notes. I'm confident my fellow listeners will cover many of the stateside selections that come to mind. So I'm going to attempt something a little bit off the beaten path and conjure up some offerings from Italy's own master of the macabre, Dario Argento, Lamberto Bava, and Fulcio Fulci. Without any further ado, number 5, The Beyond, from 1981. Number 4 is A Tie Between Demons, and its all too often overlooked sequel, Demons 2. His number 3 is Inferno. His number 2 is Deep Red. At last, but certainly not least, his number 1 is Suspiria. I believe that just about covers the cult checklist with haunted houses, demonic possession, psychic visions, and witches galore. That's all for now. As always, keep up the great work, gentlemen. All right, thank you, Ara. That's a great list, as always.
Thank you.
On the Retro Movie Love Facebook page, Lee Abernathy wrote his top 5. Haxan, Curse of the Demon, Devil Rides Out, Suspiria, and The Sect. Thank you, Lee. Emily Grinnis, she wrote The Sentinel, Rosemary's Baby, Suspiria, House of the Devil, and Teen Witch. And Joshua Conco wrote in on Twitter, The Baby, Black Christmas, Motel Hell, Tourist Trap, and Nightmare on Elm Street 2. Okay, great. Thank you guys for your lists. They're all pretty amazing, and I really appreciate when you send them in. Thank you so much.
And to the guy who saw Damned in Venice, let me know how you managed to find a copy of that film.
Yes, David. He's a pal of mine on Facebook. David, contact Kieron Edwards. He wants to know.
Been wanting to see that film for a while.
All right. Okay. Let's get into our number 1s. Wow, right here. Here is the trailer for your number 1.
Welcome, fool.
I believe in the life eternal, as promised to us by our Lord Jesus Christ.
Sergeant Howie, West Highland Police. I am here to investigate the disappearance, Rowan Morrison.
If she existed, we would know.
You suspect foul play?
I suspect murder.
Sergeant, if I were you, I would go back to the mainland.
You wouldn't want to be around here on lady.
Hail the Queen of the May! Pagan! Where is Rowan Morrison?
Come. It is time to keep your appointment with the Wicker Man.
Oh, Jesus Christ!
You'll simply never understand the true nature of sacrifice.
Okay, well, surprise. This film is the trailer for the film The Wicker Man. I don't know if people would call this specifically an occult film. There's not... no one is particularly possessed by Satan. There's no... well, I guess you could. There's no son of Satan being born onto the earth. No one is trying to sell your baby to the devil necessarily. So that doesn't really seem to be happening. There apparently is some sort of subgenre of film that I didn't realize this was a term called folk horror. I guess if there's folk music, then there could be folk horror. As far as I'm concerned, this is just basically about the old gods versus the new god, shall we say, and the struggle between those two factions or those two beliefs. And it all takes place in an island nation on an even more isolated island. And I think there's what's compelling about this is the amazing, beautiful sort of isolated area where people are practicing what I guess some people call paganism. Now I know just a tad a bit about paganism, and the best way to describe paganism, at least in my estimation, would be if you do nice things for the gods of the earth, then the earth will do nice things for you and the people and the land that you live on. And instead of just worshiping one particular god in the sky and being afraid of him, if I had to choose between religions, now of course these religions, well, I'm actually already a member of a particular church right now, but this particular church I think would be okay with me choosing between pagans or Christianity. It's the kind of church that you join, in college with your friends. You just sort of you all of a sudden realize there's this church that you can join, and then all of a sudden one day everyone on your dorm floor becomes a minister of this church, and and so that's what happened to me. So I don't know if you can guess what church that is, but
no, what is it?
Of course, it's the Universal Life Church.
Oh, right, of course, yeah.
So yeah, anyone who needs to get married quickly, just let me know how I can perform the ceremony. Anyway, so this particular film is just it's really more of a basic sort of mystery with just a sense of just creeping dread that crescendos into the last, I would say, 10 minutes of just if once you see it for the first time, it's just probably one of the more horrific endings, I think, in horror film history. At least just my own personal opinion. It's the film is tarnished, unfortunately, by a particular remake that we don't need to talk about. But this film, I think, those bees. Anyway, but this film, I think, stands up. I think, ironically enough, you could say because of its troubled sort of release history and because it had such a reputation as being, I don't know, I think it's in some ways it's one of the early examples of a film that became a cult movie. No pun intended, but and I don't know if it would have been as successful if it had a regular run. It had such a troubled release history that we can talk about later if we want. But the film is just a beautiful, peaceful, and yet kind of menacing film at the same time, about a sort of a different, older, simpler, yet you could say deeply religious world. that a particular very devout Christian policeman runs into, and they kind of mix like oil and water. And what sort of happens in the mystery and what happens to the policeman at the end is pretty amazing. And just felt it was good to like show a film such as this where the old gods win. And I just like this film a lot. It's probably one of the best parts that Christopher Lee has ever had as well. I think it's one of his favorite parts as well. There's lots and lots of nudity, which you can either, be okay with or feel a little uncomfortable with, depending on, which version you see, I guess you could say. And there's great music. I don't know if I am so much of a fan of, say, like the Mighty Wind kind of folk music. I think this particular more traditional folk music is done particularly well, and I love this particular soundtrack as well. And everyone is particularly great in this film, and I just love everything about this film. I don't know what your thoughts are on this film, Michael.
Let me just say that if I ever see anyone dancing around a maypole, I'm just out of there. I just know something's gonna happen, like in the last reel of my life. It's like what? It's a beautiful movie, beautifully made movie, and I love that false sense of security the movie has, and then it's impending dread. I don't know, just really well done. I haven't seen any of his other movies. This is Robin Hardy, right?
I don't think he's made too many other movies.
Yeah.
He did like a semi kind of sequel that wasn't very well received, and he was trying to make his third film when he passed actually recently.
Oh, so he only did like 2 films. Wow.
I think he made a few other films, but I think he was influenced by this one so much they tried to like make it as part of like a trilogy essentially, and the second one took a long time to get made.
Okay. Yeah, but it's so well done. I mean, and it's just so many great actors are in the movie. Christopher Lee, you got Edward Woodward, and just a lot of people in the movie are just so like committed to their roles, and you really get it. They really get into it, and everyone's doing a great job and top of the game, and you just kind of really buy into it all, and you just kind of really feel for like all the characters in a way. I mean, they're all like doing their thing, and then you have this kind of shock ending. Just kind of will leave you either like your jaw dropped or just I don't know, maybe more cynical people will be like, okay, that's a natural conclusion. To me, it wasn't a natural conclusion of the movie. I mean, you always expect when it's a movie that's kind of almost like the cop and the procedural kind of and a mystery to be solved. You kind of want you're just along for the ride, and you want that mystery to be solved, and just for it to end that way, it just kind of really threw me for a loop the first time I saw it, and every time I watch it since then, I just kind of really get into it, and the music's crazy, and I love that. It's like a musical. It's like almost a full blown musical, this movie. But like I said, the folk songs aren't like annoying like some movies,
right?
And I just kind of get into that. So I really like the scene where she's singing next door to Edward Woodward. And while he's like tempting him with her like being in the mood song, I thought it was a really well done, and I don't know, the actors again are great. So I'm a really big fan of this movie. I really like it, and I'm glad you put it here.
Yeah, I'm a really big fan of it as well. It's one of those crazy films that just sort of got lost in the shuffle when. Surprise, surprise, like a film, the distribution company British Lion got bought out essentially. And I think this film and ironically enough Don't Look Now were films that were being produced and released around the same time. And both of them had trouble with distribution when the new regime took over. And the new regime didn't know what to do with this film or Don't Look Now, actually. And
it's amazing to think that. Like, you think now you look at these movies as classics of the horror genre of the 70s, and to think that they weren't like, they were just like their releases were bungled. It's kind of amazing.
Yeah, and ironically enough, this happened like a few times. We sort of forget that Roger Corman had like this ability. He was good at releasing a lot of the foreign films in the U.S. He was pretty good about like striking distribution deals, and so he had a particular like he had one of the last actual like copies of the original cut, essentially, because it got cut heavily before it was released initially. I think the original 2-disc set from Anchor Bay, I think, has both versions that were available.
I have the one in the wooden box.
The wooden box one, yeah. I would say that the director's cut, shall we say, could actually use a bit of trimming. There's a little bit too much Edward Woodward voiceover in a few of the scenes, but other than that, it's amazing how much was cut out that really could have. I haven't really watched the cut version in a while, but I can't imagine releasing that. So, and Anthony Schaefer, who wrote it, is also known for writing and directing Sleuth, the Olivier Michael Caine person movie.
Not Without a Clue.
Not Without a Clue, no. But he also had what I forgot was an identical twin brother, Peter Schaefer, who's the guy who's behind Amadeus and other films like that, and Equus. And he actually died very recently himself, but it's kind of crazy that he was part of an identical twin, and they both turned out to be writers.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so the Britt Eklund scene that you're referring to, of course, also happened to have a particular, had like a couple of stunt people involved. It wasn't entirely her body. There was a body double. Yeah. And then also her voice was dubbed and sung by, there's a singer, Annie Ross, who actually turns up, I think, in a film possibly on Ben's list, actually. But she's had a long, interesting singing career, and she also ended up being in those Basket Case sequels.
Yes.
So she's had a crazy career, but she's the singer in that particular song and a few others.
She's the boozy songstress in Shortcuts too, I think, right?
Yeah.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So, I think that's about all the. That's about all the information I can. There's plenty out there, but
I mean, The Wicker Man is one of the more popular, I think, more popular movies in this list, but at the same time, it also is definitely needs to be discussed because it's so essential in its
and the whole concept of the Wicker Man, of course, has been adapted like in our day-to-day life with other things like that whole Burning Man phenomenon, for example. I don't know. I think they could use the Wicker Man as a sort of like incentive for like people to sort of behave like, say, at Ren fairs. Both people and the people who are acting in the Ren fairs. I don't know. I've had some experiences at Ren fairs where I think some people could could spend some time in a Wicker Man and think about what they've done.
Every time you ever get that urge to like look up like an old girlfriend or whatever. I did that once, and I found out that an old girlfriend was a Ren fair.
It happens.
Yeah, very much into that world.
Yeah.
It's interesting the paths we choose.
Exactly.
And hopefully I won't end up in a Wicker Man. I mean, that's not fun.
Yeah.
And especially in a Wicker Man in that 2000s version, whatever that was. 2000 somewhere, 2006 somewhere.
Yeah, that was just a strange misfire of a film for many different reasons.
It keeps playing here in LA too. I think they're like playing it again. It did so well recently at a screening that
there's a weird sort of Nicolas Cage got this point where he sort of became, I don't know, this was kind of like the tipping point for his sort of descent into self-parody, I think, with that film.
I think so.
Yeah.
Okay, So that was your number one. Here is the TV spot for my number one.
I've got a message for you.
This is the shape of fear.
You're not going to like it.
This is the color of hell.
What is it?
And this is the power of the Prince of Darkness. From John Carpenter, director of Halloween. A vision of the most powerful evil of all. Prince of Darkness.
Where are you?
Rated R. Starts Friday at theaters everywhere.
Okay, Prince of Darkness, the John Carpenter film from 1987. I went with Prince of Darkness because I always thought this was a really underappreciated John Carpenter movie. A lot of the reason why I'm drawn to these kind of occult movies is because of the mood and the atmosphere that they create, and the tension that's brought because of that. And I think this example of Prince of Darkness is really all about that mood and dread. This real sense of impending dread in this movie that John Carpenter creates, and I really dig it every time I watch it. It's also different for horror movies at the time. I feel like he was definitely intentionally going for something that was different, against the grain. He wasn't making something derivative of Halloween like everyone else was doing, although we love those movies. He wasn't doing like an Exorcist movie. He was just trying to do something a little bit different, something a bit more heady or intellectual, but something that doesn't really talk down to the audience either. Even though it is a bit of a smart horror movie, full of graduate students and intellectual types. I appreciate that. I mean, I feel like that John Carpenter, he was kind of straying away from the studio system at this point because he just wasn't having good experiences with them. Of course, famously with The Thing, and then even coming off of Big Trouble in Little China for 20th Century Fox, he wasn't having good experiences. So he made a deal with Alive Films, which was a fledgling company at the time, and he did 2 movies back to back for them, Prince of Darkness and then They Live. And of course now we look at They Live as a classic, and some people look at Prince of Darkness as a classic too. But he was doing movies on a small budget. I think this was a $3 million budget movie. Small for him after coming off of a big studio movie like Big Trouble in Little China, with a lot of effects and a lot of stunts, a lot of things going on. Mostly isolated to one location or a couple locations. In this case, a church in Los Angeles, downtown Los Angeles. And I just like that he was kind of keeping it kind of smaller so we could tell his story and his and the things that he was interested in at the time, and I like that about it. I like that John Carpenter was just doing his thing, and he crafts a really well-made movie. Another creepy movie from beginning to end. And I like a lot of the actors in it. He's not casting a lot of... there's no Kurt Russell in the movie or anyone big in the movie. You have Jameson Parker, who I liked a lot from Simon & Simon, and a lot of other good character actors in the movie that populate the movie. Some holdovers from Big Trouble in Little China and some of his other films. And I really dig it every time I watch it. I feel like it's a movie that needs to be watched more. And who's in it? Alice Cooper's in it. I love Alice Cooper. He's creepy in it too. What are your thoughts?
It's not every day you get to see a Liquid Satan film.
That's true.
So,
Liquid Satan, and guess where the Liquid Satan was kept? In Long Beach. That's where you keep Liquid Satan, in Long Beach. All those scenes where in the basement were actually filmed in Long Beach.
That's amazing. That makes sense, actually.
Yeah.
I
live in the land of Liquid Satan, and proud of it.
As you should be. It's a wonderful land. I remember seeing this film on opening night and really loving this film. And it's just such a strange concept with so many elements in like a straight horror film about Satan that you don't normally see. There's the strange dream that everyone has. That's a pretty a great dream, and it's totally like a reference to Terminator. You sort of find out in the end in some ways, so you could make that leap. And then there's just everything involving mirrors, especially in the last, say, 10, 15 minutes are pretty amazing. I'd sort of forgotten about how I watched this recently. I'd sort of forgotten how scary the last 10 or 15 minutes are. The one slight downside is that there are so many people in the cast that end up at the church. It's like a larger than usual cast. You don't get to know so many, but in some ways they kind of make fun of that with the running gag of radiologist glasses. So I think he kind of acknowledges that there are people in that film that you don't get to know that quickly, that well necessarily. But everyone does a fine job. Everyone's very serious, with a few exceptions. The particular death scene involving Alice Cooper and the guy from Riptide, what's his name, Tom Bray, apparently was a particular sort of gag that Alice Cooper had been known for using in some of his stage shows, which kind of makes sense. After watching this film, each time I've watched it, it has not compelled me to like study theoretical physics or atomic theory too closely. So maybe that's its one downside, is that it hasn't drawn me towards looking those things up and reading about them as intensely as John Carpenter apparently did,
Right.
which is how he got his ideas for this movie. But yeah, it's just a very unique setting. The church is amazing. I think, wasn't there like a showing of this Prince of Darkness at that church fairly recently?
Yeah, last year I didn't get to go. Yeah,
I heard about that. Yeah,
at the actual venue.
Yeah, it's pretty. Yeah, it's a pretty amazing setting, I think. And yeah, everything about just the whole idea behind just where this Satan or this anti-Satan, as you might call it, or anti-God. Yeah, it's just a wonderful plot, I think. I like the fact that he is trying to just say a lot of things about everything and not just make it a simple plot about trying to stop Satan.
Right.
There's he just throws.
It's very different from Halloween, like because Halloween is so simple, right?
Yes.
It doesn't explain much at all, and here he's kind of layering it with ideas and thoughts about things, and it's a pretty serious movie, but there's some humor in it too.
Mm-hmm.
There's some relief from the tension, but I like that he's just kind of making a straightforward, serious movie, but also a smart one. And I guess from an outside point of view, you could say, "Wow, why would I want to study all that stuff and be one of those geeks and just start the end of the world?" Exactly. No good can come from studying that much. That's for sure.
Right.
Now that I'm studying, because I'm taking classes and studying myself, like, oh boy, well, I don't want to be one of these guys who just has all that trouble.
Right.
Although what I'm studying is that I don't think I'll be getting into all that.
As far as I know, you won't be taking any of your classes at a particular church.
No, I definitely won't. But I should try. I should study there and see what it's like. And see what happens. See what I can conjure up. I'm in Long Beach. I think that actually the location where they shot in Long Beach was since been destroyed because it was pretty. Apparently, while filming in that location, it was pretty. It's pretty dicey and it was falling apart. So they've since destroyed it. Yeah. I should go to that spot and see what happens. See if there's any Satan juice left over, spilled.
Exactly. Everything. Yeah, I love this film quite a bit. I'm surprised it wasn't on more people's lists. I think.
I think it's overlooked in the occult world, maybe because it has like lots of the theories in the movie, and I don't know. But I think when Satan's claw is coming out at the end, it's pretty clear that it's a cult movie to me. But I do think it needs to be appreciated. I'm glad it's on Blu-ray. Screen Factory put it out, It's in a great transfer and great extras. I also didn't realize, I think John Carpenter said that, he did this movie as a relief from some of the other things that he was doing, like studio films. But I also read some contrary information that this was originally an idea for Halloween 4.
Really?
Yeah, and Halloween 3 season of the witch, deviated from the Michael Myers story, and the original idea was to kind of continue that and started making standalone stories, and this is like the basis of that, the basis idea of that, and then I think of course they that changed, and apparently he used that idea and he kind of ran with it for this movie. I don't know. That's what I've read, but who knows how much is true. From his lips, he said that it's a result from just wanting to do something different, something a bit more about stuff, about religion and other things that he's interested in. So but I applaud him for trying, and especially at a time when horror was kind of at, it's going towards a down cycle, and I would say in this time period you weren't you were getting horror movies, of course, but you weren't getting a lot of it, and but there were some bright spots, and he was still kicking. Him and Wes Craven were definitely making a lot of movies at this point in their career.
That's true.
And doing a lot of good stuff. So.
Yep.
All right, so those are our choices. Those are our lists. Anything else you want to add before we leave, you guys?
I don't know. I really enjoyed this particular topic for horror films. I just think it's just something that, I don't know. I was surprised to see the variety that I saw as well, even in the obvious imitators. Most of the imitators had something, most of them had something unique to offer. There were some of them I didn't mention because they were just not particularly exciting. But a lot of the films, at least because in particular I was covering the 70s, there was just such a glut of all things occult, just sort of being flooding into the popular sort of culture and mainstream, especially like towards the end of the 70s. Everything had, people were reading their astrology reports daily, their columns daily, and their horoscopes, and then also people were actually buying tarot cards and buying Ouija boards, and all these things were sort of going on. And there's just sort of this period, right, that there was sort of this embrace of all things occultish, and then I think in the decade you were covering, then there was this whole satanic panic sort of thing that started to happen, right? After the Dungeons and Dragons became popular and everyone became concerned about, satanic records and things like that. Mm-hmm. So it's just sort of an interesting sort of like period, like a couple of decades to sort of cover this particular topic and this particular type of horror film. It was just something unique, I thought, and I couldn't be happier to sort of talk about it.
Same here. Well, thank you guys for listening to our episode. We'll be back in the future with more horror offerings, more midnight offerings, more Manitous, and general. I'm gonna consult my Ouija board and see what we can conjure up soon. I'm gonna talk to Kathleen Wilhoit. Maybe she'll get into contact with me telepathically, and we'll see what happens for number 34 and beyond.
Well, thank you very much again for asking me beyond this. This was great fun.
Thank you, Kieron, and thank you guys, and TTFN. Ciao for now.
Here come the woman with a look in her eye. Wrist on leather with flesh on the mind. Words, weapons, sharpened knives makes you wonder how the other half died. Other half died. Makes you wonder. Well, here come the man with a look in his eye. It's fed on nothing but full of pride. Look at him go, look at him kick. Makes you wonder how the other half live. the tide. Future uncertain, but certainly slight. Look at the faces, listen to the bells. It's hard to believe we need a place called hell. Place called hell. The devil inside, the devil inside. Every single one of us, the devil inside. Devil inside, the devil inside. Every single one of us, the devil inside.
You're just jealous.
Jealous? Jealous? You don't even exist to me! You don't even exist. You are nothing. You are shit. You don't exist. The only way you know how to treat women is by treating them like whores when you're the whore! And that's gonna stop! Do you understand? You understand what I'm saying?
I'm sorry.
He's sorry! Oh, he's sorry! He's sorry! He's sorry! He's sorry! He's sorry! He's sorry! Sorry,
Oh, now is this where you start crying and tell me to be a good little girl? Look, just because you chose not to use it doesn't mean I have to. Want to know the truth? I think you were scared, and I think you were stupid. I'm neither one. I'm gonna have what's out there. I'm gonna have it all.
Charlie?
Yes?
Name one bad thing you've done.
Well, I've done bad things. But let's talk about you for a second. Tell me one bad thing that you've done, and it better be evil.
How evil?
Really evil. Like so evil that you would say it was evil. Like it's the fruits of the devil. Evil.